Sunday night edition of the Crash the Pond podcast, off-season edition. This is well, technically it's our
Yeah,
second
yeah. I was
podcast of
like,
the
we've already
off-season.
done an off-season one, Felix. Come on, come on.
Yes, but there were still Ducks games that week. So
True,
I'm
true.
going to say that this is the first one post any kind of Ducks hockey, although we did have a bunch of press conferences, comments to get
hmm
into this week. And let's just say that Dallas Eakins, the players, making some interesting comments, which I don't know how much they speak to like self-awareness or the state of this franchise, or I don't know.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
it,
It's
it,
interesting.
it's definitely interesting. And I mean, we also had the playoffs start this weekend,
Yep.
and you and I are recording this. It's obviously 8 p.m. on Sunday,
Yep.
and the Panthers Lightning game had just ended. And oh boy, that
Yeah.
was one of the best games I think I've watched all season. Now, granted, most of the games you and I have watched have been Ducks games, which let's
Have
just
been awful.
say are not even close to played at that pace. And
Uncompetitive.
I'm just gonna say that game might or this series might be the best series of the entire playoffs.
Yeah, that was one of the best hockey games I ever watched, like just period. That
Yeah.
was really good. I mean, it had everything. It had physicality, it had a bunch of skill, a bunch of speed, odd man rushes, it had controversial officiating. It just had everything you would want in a playoff game, but not not too much extracurricular to where it took away from the actual
Well,
action itself. And also fans. Like there were
I
almost 10,000
I was
fans
gonna
in that
say
arena.
it felt like with the atmosphere in the building, with the on ice product, with everything like that, that felt like the first playoff game I've watched in 2 years.
Yeah,
Because
and
it really
yeah,
really showed the difference between the bubble last season, which granted, no knock on the NHL, they did a fantastic job with that
well,
bubble.
it's not
That
the
was
same.
but that was the right thing for them to do also. But it's just a completely different atmosphere, completely different setup, and it was a blast of a game to watch, and I'm so excited for that series.
Man, if your other rival club is in the NHL or teams or just a fan that doesn't like the Lightning, seeing Nikita Kucherov take the season off and then put up 3 points in his first game back must just have you kicking and screaming about how this isn't fair because he looked fresh out there and he
He
looked dangerous.
he did. I mean, this series is going to be great. Huberdeau and Barkov versus Stamkos and Kucherov.
Braden Point. I mean, just go down the list. And I think what's so fun about, and sorry, folks, we are going to get to the Ducks, I promise. But
Yeah.
if you watch this game or if you've watched the highlights by now, if you're listening, you know just how great of a game this was. What I noticed from both these teams is just how good they are at getting shots from the slot, at how good they are at generating rushes, and
They both were very much playing the transition style of game,
and very very active D. I mean, that's how they score.
yeah,
I mean, that's how the Lightning scored the game winner is because Braden Point just flew the zone
I
as soon as they got a turnover.
I felt like basically anytime Montour was on the ice, there was gonna be basically two different an odd man rush going either direction every single time, and
Yeah,
it was a blast to watch.
yeah, Brandon Montour getting two grade A scoring chances in this game and looking all right. I mean, we were talking about it before we started recording, but I still think that was a great trade for the Ducks because in hindsight, getting a first round pick for Brandon Montour, especially if you look at like the trade market this year, is kind of incredible. But he is right now like in probably the best possible role. He's a defenseman in an offensive system. They want him to kind of play into his strengths and join the rush. He's not being looked at to be like a true top four guy. And so I think it's great for him. That team is fun to watch. I really dearly wish that they were wearing their reverse retros
Oh,
instead of
it
their.
was so much better.
I mean, to be fair though, their homes aren't terrible. They're just boring. Like
No,
they're not the most exciting.
They're bad. The crest is not as good. Everything's bad about those jerseys. They should be wearing those reverse retros. But regardless, so enough about that though. You want to
Well,
jump?
I just want to quickly add on the jersey note. It's funny for both of these teams. If they were wearing their reverse retros, their older jerseys, it'd be more fun because both these teams have boring versions of what they used to have. So anyway,
And that same thing would apply to the Ducks. So
yeah. Well,
let-
it's a trend. It's a trend in the entire league.
Yeah.
Teams go more boring over time.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into the Ducks though. Since we are a Ducks show, we gotta put on that act, I suppose. The Ducks had their exit interviews this week, and a lot of it was just kind of what you would expect. Players talking about how this was a difficult year, about what they need to improve on. So not a lot of stuff to truly dive into there, but there were some notable quotes from Dallas Eakins in his exit interview. And I mean, I would say there's about three that really stood out. And I think the one to me that stood out the most is his comment about how the Ducks were in 29 one goal games. And when he said 29 one goal games in the interview, he said it again for emphasis. And he just couldn't get over the fact that they were in 21 one goal games. And he talked about how those could have gone so much differently and that could have made a difference in the season. And it's just like, yes, the Ducks were in close games, but do you take that as a sign that this was a season that could have gone differently or a sign of a competitive team? What did you make of that comment?
I mean, here's the thing. They were in that many one-goal games, and they still had a negative 53 goal differential. Like, I don't really know what you're trying to get at there. I guess the comment is basically we could have gone to all these.
Well, it's also trying to show that they were competitive.
We could have had these games go to overtime, or we did have these games go to overtime, and maybe we swap them. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of what you see. I mean, the Ducks had a lot of games go to overtime this year, and they were kind of iffy. The Ducks, like, I don't. Maybe this is kind of bold or anything like that.
And this is another part of the quote that I should mention. He said that tells me at least we're close.
This team had 11 regulation wins this season.
Yeah, I mean,
let's not beat around the bush here. Let's not do any of that. I really do believe that you should be looking at regulation wins, especially when you're looking at a team like this and trying to evaluate where they're at, where they're going, everything like that. Because at the end of the day, the game is played on 5-on-5. The game in the playoffs, this game that we watched today, the Panthers Lightning game, was played at 5-on-5. When it goes to overtime, it's
except if you're the Lightning and your power play is a cheat code,
or you go there's all the penalties, you can go 4-on-4. But regardless, overtime, everything is 5-on-5 when in terms of this. So you want to be winning games of regulation. 3-on-3, the shootout, they're both skills competitions. That is my view of it. They are skills competitions. They do not accurately reflect actual on ice 5-on-5 game that results in wins in the playoffs. So a good determining factor when you're trying to look at a team is actually looking at their regulation wins. And the Ducks had 11. The Ducks had 11 regulation wins over their 56 games. And I didn't even mean to even talk about this right now, but one thing I kind of noticed this week, and I was curious when I was looking at it, was that's by far the worst season in Ducks history. And it's not even close. And so if you look at something like points percentage, this year is slightly the worst season in franchise history, with them getting a 384 points percentage versus 385 in the 94-95 lockout shortened season also, where they only played 48 games. But if you recall, in 94-95, there was no overtime at all. It was purely ties. So if you were going to get wins, it had to be a regulation win. And that Ducks team got 16 regulation wins. And so if you're purely trying to look at like winning percentage and regulation winning percentage, that team had it was like a 33% regulation winning percentage. This Ducks team this season had a 19.6% win percentage. Like, I don't get how you can find anything like that and say, well, we were in all these 1-goal games. You won 19% of your games in regulation. You were in these 1-goal games because you basically held on and got games to overtime. Like that's not something to be proud of. Like, overtime, like, the loser point has kind of instilled this, and I think that this is a prime example of where the 3-2-1 point system would be kind of important, but that's not really here nor there. Basically, at the end of the day, this Ducks team was bad. Trying to add any qualifier like that, I think, kind of dismisses actually how bad they were.
Well, also, I think it would be important for us to evaluate that comment. Is 29 a lot for most? Like, you know, is that a noteworthy number? Like, is that above or below average? You know, like, we don't even really know any context. It sounds like a lot. There were 56 games, but I don't know. It's just, the number to me isn't quite as much of the issue there as much as the sentiment that we are close and that, that things could have easily gone a different way. It's just anyone who watched this team this season probably, and with a critical eye, that's not watching with orange tinted lenses, could tell you that they were in 1-goal games despite of the way that they were playing. This wasn't like because they were really pushing the issue, maybe a little bit more towards the end and in pockets throughout the season, but it wasn't because they were this kind of hard-nosed team that was difficult to play against.
I think here's kind of getting to the core of the issue with that quote. is it lacks the understanding of what the actual problem is. That it lacks the thought process of actually identifying an issue with the roster. Instead, it's searching for something to say, well, there was this, and we had this, and so we weren't actually as bad as we said, as compared to actually looking at what the issue was and saying, well, we were in these 1-goal games, but we still lost all of these. We still weren't scoring. We were struggling to score goals. We were one of the worst teams in generating expected goals for this season. We really need to work on our game in transition. We were one of the worst transition offense teams in the league. If you look at some of the manually tracked data from Corey Schneider, I think the only team that was worse in transition was the Detroit Red Wings this year. And so I think the core of my issue with that quote is, it's kind of a very similar thing as to what we've been fed from Bob Murray and the franchise as a whole for the last couple of seasons, which is next season will be better. Next season will be better, with no actual action. And it's just kind of basing it off of this hope of various different things that are really unfounded. And it lacks actual perspective. It lacks actual looking at yourself from the inside, trying to identify the problem. Introspection, I think, is the word I was looking for there, to actually identify what your issue is. And I think that that's kind of my issue with that quote, is that it's just, it doesn't explain anything.
I mean, one thing to be perfectly clear about is that if you're going into these exit interviews as a listener, watching them, and your expectation is that you're going to get like perfect candor, and you're actually going to have coaches, or especially coaches, because I think players are better about this, but just like owning up to maybe their lack of performance. It's not quite as common as you would think. I'm not saying that doesn't dismiss it, but I'm not expecting Dallas Eakins to come in there and maybe be 100% truthful. I am somewhat expecting the company line to be towed. It's
agreed,
not
agreed.
And I think also as a coach and as players, part of your mentality is you skew towards looking at the positive. You skew towards where's the opportunity. And that's just how these guys are wired. And so again, look, in a kind of reflective interview, looking for kind of maybe the silver lining, that's not crazy either. But
Yeah.
but I'm not saying this at all to invalidate what you're saying, because I think what you're saying is still probably true. It's just, I think we need just a little perspective on like what to expect from these interviews. Yeah.
And I think specifically when it comes to players, I'm actually way more willing to be easy on the players as a whole, because at the end of the day, this is their job. This is their livelihood. And so they're like, Rickard Rakell had a quote that was basically like, I want to be a Duck. I think that we're going to be better next year. We showed signs, all these different things. And it's like, of course a player's going to say that.
A player, like that's what you would want them to say. Like if they're in a situation, you want them to believe that things can be turned around, because that is their job, is to go out there and win.
Yeah, and I think you also understand where they're coming from, because they're trying to keep their job. They don't want to.
But doesn't that same logic apply to coaches though?
Yeah, no, I think it does, but I think it applies. I think it applies more so to players than it does coaches, because I think the coaches have more responsibility on everything in their fingers and everything. I think
coaches have more power.
Exactly, and same thing even with more so with general managers, and so. But let's get into the couple of other quotes here just to kind of briefly break them down.
Well, because there was also another one that stood out to me, which I don't think you have in your list here, but because Eakins was asked about his own coaching performance, and he said he actually talked about how, just as it was for the players, it was a roller coaster ride for him as well. He mentioned that there was a lot of negativity towards like the 12-game mark with the team, and that he wished that he would have managed that negativity earlier in the season. And, it wasn't for long stretches, but he thinks there were a couple of instances where he really wishes he had managed it better, which I found kind of interesting, because that does line up a little bit with when Adam Henrique was put on waivers. And so
100%.
I just wonder what happened there. I mean, we can only speculate, but
especially if you listen to the interview, he kind of goes into a little bit more depth than kind of the quotes within Eric Stevens' article has about that specific 12-game mark, and how that really led to a lot of negativity that really lasted a couple of weeks. And that kind of lines up with Adam Henrique getting scratched, getting waived, and then kind of being put on the taxi squad after clearing waivers for about a week or two. And it really kind of lines up perfectly with that. Now, granted, like you said, purely speculation, no actual confirmation on that, but it lines up perfectly with it. So, I mean, it's kind of like when there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything to dispel the idea that there was maybe not the best harmony in that locker room by the time Adam Henrique was waived, and maybe that's part of why he was waived. I do kind of find it interesting though that that's like the one thing that he really harped on, and not anything kind of X's and O's related, anything tactical. And I wouldn't necessarily expect him to do that, but still interesting that that is where he went to, as
Yeah,
opposed to anything else,
yeah,
really.
and kind of one quote that I find that I really want to talk about here that kind of goes into, I think, a miss on his part that leads to the negativity, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
is the quote by him that says, I think it, and with specifically addressing the fact that the team put out there that their goal this season was to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Their goal was to be competitive and fight for that final playoff spot. And the quote was, I think that us having a lofty goal and missing it's better than shooting low and hitting it. But now that it's all over, I think it's really easy to look back and go, hey, maybe we shouldn't have said that. That's got to be your goal. Every year you come in, your goal should be to win no matter what. And here's my issue with that quote. I get the message he's trying to put across that you don't want to be content with mediocrity. You don't want to be content
Mm-hmm.
with being bad. But I
Yeah.
think setting up an expectation that's too high does a disservice to your fans. It does a disservice to your players. And it really sets them up to fail.
Well,
Because,
it's kind of dishonest.
yes, and so even if, like, this isn't me saying you set your goal to be like not finishing last. What you should be doing here is setting up your goal to say, hey, we're going to go into every game, we're going to compete and make it hard on the other team. We're not going to win every game, but we're going to make it hard for the other team to at least get 2 points, and we'll see where that ends up taking us. And that type of approach not only is more honest with your players and more honest with your fan base, it sets up your players to not be as negative when you lose games, allows them to be looser, that the pressure isn't on them, allows them to go out there and just have fun and play hockey and do what they're known to do. And by setting up a proper expectation, and it's not necessarily setting the bar too low, it's setting it where it should be set, you are setting your players up to succeed and not fail. By putting it too high, you have the situation that the Ducks had this year, which is basically every single time the Ducks got just absolutely trounced. It was like, this was a team that was supposed to make the playoffs. This is a team that was supposed to do such and such and such by every by the fan base.
People are harder on them as a result.
Yeah, and
Also,
so
I think part of his logic didn't really make sense though, because he was like, well, we didn't get to go to the bubble, we didn't have any kind of play in, we only had ourselves to compare to, and so maybe that was why the bar was set too high, because we didn't really have a measuring stick. It's like, come on, the previous season didn't happen. You didn't
yeah,
watch the bubble. Like, you're really
but
telling me that you were that's
like
why.
you want to set your team up for success. And like, look at, for instance, I know from listening to various different podcasts, I haven't watched them too much, but the Senators had a really rough start to the year, but finished out really strong and playing really good hockey and everything like that. No one in that organization said our goal is to make the playoffs in this division. They knew they were going to be lower, but their goal was to basically go out. And I think that DJ King's quote was essentially, we want to go out and make it hard on the other teams and make it not a fun job to play against us or fun time to play against us.
Yeah.
And that sets up your players to be in a better position. You're not putting them in this tough spot. I mean, Dallas Eakins at the beginning of the season had quotes where he basically said, our goal isn't to just get players out there to get playing time. We need to be playing people to win games. And all this does is essentially like put your team in a bad spot. I mean, I guess your Cubians chiming in our Twitch chat saying Melnick, Dorian promise a cup in the next 3 to 5 years for Ottawa. And
Yeah,
granted that
I think you might be a little underselling Ottawa, but I
maybe.
just want to say that I think, look, Dallas Eakins isn't the one picking the organizational direction,
No,
right?
he's not.
So like, this is a more of a Murray issue,
Yes, 100%.
and ultimately, if you're the general manager and that's what you're telling your coach, that's then what he tells the players. And consequently, what you get is the kind of roster construction we saw this season, which is a lot of favoring kind of safe, quote unquote, safe, experienced players over giving a younger guy more time or letting him work through mistakes. And we saw that approach just like fundamentally didn't work
Yeah.
to start the year. And so, yeah, it's a top-down issue for sure,
And
it
I
wasn't
mean,
really well executed by anyone involved.
and I think the other thing is, like I said, this is the worst season in franchise history. There needs to be some speculate or some introspection about what went wrong, clearly the approach that they had to start the year did not work. Because they were the worst team. They were the second worst team in the league. They had
Yeah,
11.
but Jake, how could they have known? They didn't get to play in the bubble.
Yeah.
They could have not known that they would be this bad.
Can we also just briefly talk about the injury narrative and how I just find that it's such a crutch because every team deals with injuries in
I
this
mean,
league.
look at the Lightning.
Look at the Pittsburgh Penguins playing today without Evgeny Malkin. Every
Yep.
team deals with injuries. Every team does. And so to say, and Dallas Eakins had a quote like this where he's like, basically, we only had Hampus Lindholm for a certain amount of games. We only had 2 games with Fowler, Lindholm, and Manson all playing. And it's like, sure, you can say that, but every team has injuries. This isn't something exclusive to the Ducks.
Yeah, and also like saying that doesn't really like put him in the best light, because even if that is true, it's like, oh, so you're basically saying that you couldn't
Yeah.
like help your team work through that, or you weren't able to outcoach that, essentially, because that's kind of how a lot of Jack Adams Coach of the Year campaigns are born, is like you have a team that's facing injuries or that has low expectations that surpasses them. So if anything, that kind of sets you up if you're a coach, and he kind of instead defaulted to more of how this was a crutch. And look, I mean, like I said, this press conference was really nothing too surprising,
No.
nothing that really stood out. A lot of the familiar tropes. And I mean, really what it said to me is that all these guys are coming back next year.
Yeah.
I mean, Eakins is back, Murray is back. They all sound very secure in their jobs. And
have you listened? Speaking of that, have you listened to 31 Thoughts, the 31 Thoughts podcast yet? That came out, I think it was on Friday. I've listened.
No, I haven't.
So I listened to the first bit of it, and they mentioned the Ducks a little bit. First off, with specific to they could be in on Jack Eichel, which is something we'll probably discuss in another episode coming forward. We're not going to get into that really in this episode.
We debated it on our Patreon
We
show,
did,
but
but the other thing, they're like, they're curious because basically they're like, it's really quiet from Anaheim, and not saying that means something's happening, but we also haven't gotten the no one's being fired or no one's being let go. There's no changes coming. And so they're like, I would keep an eye on it. They're like, I'm not sure if anything will happen, but we haven't gotten that all clear.
Yeah, I am just defaulting to quiet, tight-lipped organization. Would not expect any kind of, and I'm sure that the Ducks are pissed at Friedman after this season, because don't forget, he put out the Terry rumor and he put out that Delorier was being traded, and he didn't get traded.
That's
so
true.
It might just be a breakdown there. Although, to be fair, Friedman doesn't, it's not like he's directly asking the Ducks. He's probably got sources, but
yeah,
and I'm sure that there's a little bit of a breakdown there. But hey, if we're to read that the other way, that would be surprising. That would not be what I would expect. So we'll see.
Yeah. And the other quote that really stuck out to me was Dallas Eakins saying we have a far different on-ice product now than we did at the end of last year, and said even a far different on-ice product now than we had at the start of the year. Or even
at the end of last year, I think that that's a little more fair, because yes, like Trevor Zegras at center compared to the end of last season, that is hugely different.
Yes.
Jamie Drysdale back there, those are definitely significant differences.
So I think the global perspective of the way they've played, though, this past season versus last year, I'd argue they took a step back.
They did.
And so I think that's kind of my issue with that quote is, sure, you can say the composition of the team, adding in Zegras, adding in Drysdale adds that flair. But if you compare this season to last year, I mean, the Ducks were worse in terms of expected goals for percentage. They generated less expected goals for per 60 by a significant amount, 2.32 last season to 2.08 this past season. And then 2.6, they were slightly better at suppressing chances against at 2.61 in the 1920 season to 2.5 in the 2021 season. And so slightly better, but it's they were worse. They were worse this past year. So by saying that they were their on ice product was better, which is kind of the underlying message.
I feel like that's really skewed by like maybe the last 2 weeks of the season.
Yes,
and like some of those fun LA games,
which came mainly against the LA Kings.
Well, that's the thing, and then they came completely crashing back down to earth against Minnesota. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, look, I do think there are some differences. I think, even though the actual aggregate results are largely the same, I think that some players, like some young players taking big steps forward this year, does make a difference on the on-ice product, does give you reason for optimism. But yeah, as a whole, that sentiment seems a little optimistic.
Yes. And so let's go ahead and jump in briefly to the fact that Dave McNabb retired. What are your thoughts on that overall?
Well, David McNabb, first of all, was the one who managed the Ducks salary cap, all the CBA kind of intricacies that we all know Jake loves to dive into, to nerd out on, and he's been in the NHL for decades now as a just as a player, personnel, um, just really everything. And I, all credit to him and his career, everything like that. But I think it's probably a good thing for the Ducks. I think that David McNabb's 65. It's probably a good thing to maybe get some younger, maybe not younger, but just a fresh set of eyes in the situation. Get someone who maybe is a little more up to date, a little more modern, because the Ducks have had a lot of kind of snafus over the last couple of years, losing guys on waivers. Like, their asset management hasn't been the greatest. Their contracts haven't been the greatest. And look, David McNabb is not, we don't know how much influence he had, but as such an experienced member of the organization, as such a respected hockey man who's been around for so long, you can assume pretty safely he probably had a significant say in all of this. And so I think to see him retire, we'll see what the Ducks do, how they fill that void. But I think it may not necessarily be the worst thing in the world. I mean, he got a lot of love, and rightfully so, and people really crediting him for giving them kind of explanations like media members on CBA stuff. But I think ultimately it's probably a good thing, just depending on how they replace him.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, he was a guy that Eric Stevens had quoted as being their cap guy, their waiver guy. I believe that he was kind of in charge of their college free agent. And Dave McNabb even mentioned that he's like, we had a really good stretch there in kind of the mid to late 2000s, but I mean, we haven't really done a whole lot of late, and even said that in his thing in his.
Well, he also said that he thinks that the Ducks can be turned around quick for
Yeah,
next season.
which I
If and like the rationale was pretty, it was pretty spot on to what we've heard the last
yeah,
couple of years, which makes you believe, hey, this guy does have
a big
have a
say.
say. He said you could flip in and around in a hurry. I'm not as concerned as a lot of people are. I feel targeted in that statement. I'm not as
100%.
concerned as a lot of people are,
Yeah.
because I know the character in that locker room is there, which is laughable on so
Yeah,
many
I
levels.
mean, here's the thing, and I
But
mean,
he he was just he. I just want to mention quickly. He cited health, veterans bouncing back, and breakout years for youngsters as factors of why they could bounce back. And it's like, yes, if everything goes right, which we know it never does, then yeah, you could turn around quickly. I'm sure.
yeah,
It's
definitely.
like, yeah, if I get a job that pays me millions tomorrow, then yeah, I'll be a millionaire in a hurry. But a lot of things are going to have to happen. So, not, I mean, again, not surprising that that they're all
Well,
selling optimism, right? That is the company line, but it just feels so out of touch with what we've
here's
seen
the issue here.
on the ice.
He is the what was his exact position?
Senior vice president
Yeah, there
of
we go.
hockey
Senior
operations.
vice president of hockey operations. So you would imagine that he was the right hand man essentially at Bob Murray. He was probably second in command in terms of in terms of say and sway within the Ducks organization. And so I think that he is him being gone is not necessarily a bad thing if you're looking for this Ducks franchise to transition. I think obviously he deserves credit for being with the franchise for so long,
Yep.
for helping out with things and coming up with the franchise. But I think in the same breath, we probably should look with a critical eye and say if he was the cap guy, if he was the CBA guy, this is the same guy that was within the management role when the Ducks gave up Shea Theodore to get rid of Clayton Stoner. This is the same guy that gave out the contracts they did, giving out a no movement clause and managing the cap with Kevin Bieksa in the way that they did. This is the same person that's decided, I guess, the Ducks should be buying out Corey Perry for whatever reason, and having the residual cap hit. And so you look at a lot of these moves, you look at losing Christian Juice waivers, you look at all these different things, and the last couple of years have not been kind if that was his role within the Ducks organization. And so I think overall, and this is not meant to be that, not trying to be super harsh, but I guess it is. But Dave McNabb at the end of the day is a hockey lifer. He's kind of one of the old hockey men. That's kind of where he came from. He played the game. And I think you look at a lot of the top teams in the league, their guy running their cap is typically kind of more of a math type person, more so a lawyer, somewhat maybe a lawyer, someone that really kind of understands the numbers. You want someone more so that's an engineering type brain, an accounting type brain, lawyer type brain that kind of really can dive into all of this and understand all of it. And that's exactly where
Well,
you want to
David
be.
McNabb came up as a scout.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
that was his big thing. Yeah. Which, and the thing is, the game that he's been playing with the CBA, like kind of his job, has only gotten harder, I think, as the years have gone on. Like, it's only gotten more complicated. You have the expansion drafts this season with the taxi squad. Like, there's been more and more layers added. And it feels like as it's gotten more complicated, the Ducks' performance within that has gone down.
Yeah. Yep.
So
And at the end of the day, I mean, here's the thing with the flat cap for the next however many years, it's going to be a while. It's going to cause even more maneuvering. And also it's going to mean that cap space is going to be, it's going to be at even more of a premium. And not to dive too much into this, but I kind of just quickly looked at Evolving Hockey's, now we're kind of transitioning slightly away from Dave McNabb, but I think it's interesting here.
well, I mean, that's the big takeaway is that good for him, great career, but ultimately Ducks maybe benefit.
Yeah, the Ducks are set with them signing their guys, though. I took a look at Evolving Hockey's contract projections for the upcoming season, and let's just say that all those guys get the exact contracts that Cap Friendly or that Evolving Hockey has. The Ducks per Cap Friendly's roster creator, they would have about $9 million cap space, or around $9 million cap space. And I think that the Ducks, if they're smart, they should not necessarily be going out and trying to sign a guy with that money or trading for a guy to help this team this year. What they really should be doing is trying to weaponize that cap space. They should be trying to, and the name that came to mind is they should be trying to get like a Louis Eriksson for a first round pick. Louis Eriksson has 1 year left at $6 million. Ducks will have $9 million cap space. Why not? And so the reason why I brought this up is the fact that, if you have someone new that's running your cap that maybe understands how cap space should be valued, that maybe they would be able to kind of value that and evaluate that and basically help the Ducks get picks. And that's what they need. But I doubt they'll do that. Just a thought that had run through my head.
Yeah, you're asking for a lot there.
I 100% am, and I know that. So time for a break, and then we'll get into our player grades.
Yeah, so we're going to take a break here, but don't go anywhere because we are going to, on the other side of this, we will do a player-by-player grading system of every Ducks player this year. So it'll be interesting. So, but let's do the ad read first, though.
Breaking news. This important PSA is brought to you by Manscaped.com. This is your public service announcement and the news you've all been waiting for. The Manscaped engineering team has confirmed that they have successfully created the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is now available for purchase in the United States and Canada. This new trimmer was just released only moments ago, and we are the first to get our hands on it and share the news. Join over the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free shipping worldwide with the code CTP at manscaped.com. Felix and I are both two of the very first people to try the new 4.0, and we're both blown away with the performance. The craftsmanship and the detail of the 4.0 are the next level. I mean, Felix, what do you think of their ceramic blade and skin-safe technology?
Yeah, so that technology, it's so good that it almost seems as if Manscaped work with Elon Musk's engineers to ensure that your testes are as safe as possible. So yeah, that's some high praise, but it's true. It's definitely an upgrade over the 3.0, which we've talked a lot about on the show.
Yeah, and what makes this and here's what makes this trimmer different than all other trimmers. A new multi-function on and off switch can engage a travel lock created for people who like to travel. And it also gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. I've talked about the light on the Manscaped 3.0. It helps a lot.
It's a lifesaver.
It's not always needed. And so it's nice to have the ability to turn it on and off. And you can do that. And the new trimmer even allows you to customize your trim if you want to go with different lengths, with different guard lengths with sizes 1 through 4. And look-wise, it's very sleek. And the two-tone matte and gloss finish is a nice little look there.
Yeah, so, it's nice. And yeah, you can even cut your hair with it now with the guard length. So there you go.
Yep. And there is, I mean, this is the big thing. There's wireless charging, Felix.
Yeah,
the Lawnmower 4.0's new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help your battery length last longer. So, you can get 20% off and free shipping with the code CTP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code CTP. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
There you go. Now I want to go shave or trim or do something. I'm hyped after that.
M. Young says Manscaped, the Tesla of trimmers. Yeah.
Oh, it's just so very good. Okay, let's do player grades. Are you ready?
Let's do it. And should we just give everyone full disclosure on this?
Well, okay, so this is the part I want to disclose first. Grading system. What is your approach to grading these
My
players?
approach to grading is grade based upon expectation.
Just arbitrary?
A is exceeding expectation. B, or very like extremely exceeding expectation. B is just slightly exceeding expectation. C is at expected. D, below expectation. F, just a complete failure. And let's not do pluses or minuses.
I did a bunch of
I'm
plus and
telling you
minuses.
to remove them from your list.
I'm not. I'm not.
Remove them from the list, Felix.
It's nuance. It adds nuance. I mean, my grading system is pretty similar. So for both of ours, it's pretty subjective, right? Like we're not going to shy away from that. Like this is purely subjective. If you disagree, that's fine. We can have it. We can have a disagreement, but part of mine is definitely based on expectation. So like an A for one player doesn't necessarily mean, like you said, the same thing for another player. And also, I think especially for a lot of the Ducks' young players, it's was their improvement because
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what you're looking for with a lot of those guys. It's not so much how good are they now; it's how good are they now compared to a year before. And so that factored in heavily for a lot of these grades with the younger players.
Yep. And Salem wants to give her opinion, I guess. No.
Oh, that is so good. Okay. And yeah, and then also full disclosure, I did my homework preparing these and I don't think Jake did. So he's going more off the hip, from the hip, off the cuff, whatever expression
You
you
know,
want to
that
use.
that Panthers Lightning game was very good.
Yeah. Well,
And I decided to do that. Plus also writing an expansion draft article. So
yeah, so
trying to write content for the website and just, the
you
player
want to
grade.
complete you went a completely different route at the expense of being prepared for this. It's okay. This is actually good. I'm
It
happy
is.
that we have a little bit of a difference in approach because I'll just throw things at you and we'll see where we each land. So, do you want me
And
to give you my grades first
let
as we go through this?
let's mention the player, and I'm gonna throw up, just so everyone knows, I'm gonna go ahead and throw up on the screen for anyone watching the video version of this podcast. I'll throw up the J Fresh player evaluation card for the season, along with I'll
Okay.
also put up Evolving Hockey's player or RAPM chart for the season.
So I'll just go through the list that I have, and
Okay.
it's alphabetical from the last name
Okay.
down.
Let,
So
let let's do it.
okay, are you ready?
Uh, Give me 1 second
I
here.
want you really ready. I don't want any multitasking. I want your
Yeah,
full focus here. This is important.
you've got my focus.
The players are listening, I'm sure, waiting to hear their grades.
You
So concerned about
you've
this.
got my focus.
Okay, David Backus. What's
Da-
your grade for David Backus?
David Backus. I'm gonna go, and Backus actually does not have a player card. I'm gonna go with off the cuff. I'm gonna go with a C. I mean,
Interesting.
the issue there is just he didn't play that much, but I mean, what he did and when he did play, I think it was about where I expected him to be. I mean, he's a guy where if I'm pulling up the RAPM chart, he was above replacement level slightly in terms of basically expected goals for, shot attempts for, shot attempts against, and basically at average and quality against. So I would say probably about a C.
Yeah, I actually give him a B plus.
That's fair.
So I went way more optimistic. Well, I mean, to me, he was really solid when he played, despite
Okay,
being 37. I mean,
that's true.
that's the part to me is that at his age, you would actually expect his performance to really take a hit year over year, and instead, there's even an argument he was as good as he was the season before, if not maybe even a little better in some areas. So,
That's fair.
the impact did go down, but that's like it's not like
Yeah,
it wasn't like
I guess it just depends on where, and I think the issue that I have there is just with the amount of games that he played.
yeah,
And a C isn't necessarily meant to be a knock on him. That's just he was where I expected him to be.
My expectation was just a little lower. I
That's
didn't
fair.
think that like he could follow, like he could keep doing that year over year at his age.
That's fair.
Just being kind of a solid two-way guy. Okay, this is one that you probably have not thought of, which is fine. I put him in my list because I just cut and paste the roster. Sam Carrick. What do you give Sam Carrick? He actually, so I'll just say this tiny sample, but he actually was good defensively if you just look at his numbers. But just
can I just say,
absolutely brought nothing offensively.
yeah, can
Nothing.
I just say incomplete?
I gave him a B because I was actually shocked when I looked at his numbers. I was like, I'll give him some love here. I'll give him a B.
I mean, here, let me just look. I'm curious how many games he actually played. But Sam Carrick, if I can find him on Here, where is he in the Sam Carrick played 13 games.
Yeah, he played a decent amount of games.
He played
Well,
13.
it's a fifth of the season.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
C.
All right.
It's defaulting to C.
This will be a fun one. Max Comtois.
Max Comtois is an interesting one. I think you have to go with an A just because I think if you're looking at pure production, he's a guy that really took that big step in terms of being able to put the puck in the back of the net and really continue what he did. And I'm going to jump all around right now, but I now have open. He had 33 points in 55 games, led the team in points, had 16 goals, which if he played over the course of an entire season,
roughly a 22 goal pace, 23, something like that.
23 goal season. And
I think it was like 24. But
the main concern, it's not, and I think this is the key thing here, is that my concern is how repeatable this is going to be, but that's not necessarily meant to be a knock. But he shot 17% on the season. Going back to his player card, you can see 62 percentile for WAR, but a lot of that's being driven by the fact that he was in the 79th percentile in terms of finishing. So whether he can continue that or not is going to be a key thing. And really what we need to see from him moving forward is essentially, I don't think he's going to maintain there. It's very doubtful he's going to maintain a 17% shooting percentage. So what he has to do is needs to start generating more shots and more shot attempts.
Well, that's
more
the
shots
thing.
on goal. So that once that that shooting percentage comes down, the goals are still going to be there.
Well, so that's the thing. That's why I gave him an A, because his offensive play driving at 5-on-5 took a huge improvement this year. He went from like a shot only guy to a guy who's still like the big bulk of his value is his shot, but can actually help you drive offense, which is not something that he was doing before. And even his defensive game, which is still not good, like it's still a weakness for him, it got better this year. It went from like absolutely atrocious to pretty bad. Like there's still, he took steps in pretty much every facet of his game. And even if you want to say, okay, this might not be that repeatable, there's still signs that he is improving as a player overall. And so that's why for me, it was a pretty easy A. Also, just as an intangible, it feels like he's kind of becoming one of the leaders of this team. Like he's only, in his early 20s, and it already feels like he's one of the go-to guys offensively. And so I think playing with Zegras, playing with Terry, more cerebral guys, he's only going to thrive as he continues.
100%. And so I think he definitely deserves an A. He's one of the few guys to actually score this year. I think my only concern is whether that's going to be repeatable or not.
Well, sure, and that's the thing. Like we don't know that for sure yet. But at the same
signs
time,
point towards it's going to be, though.
We are grading like what happened.
Yes,
100%. This isn't like a forecasting grade, so keep that in mind as we continue on. But yeah, I did want to really just drive home the fact that he really did improve all just down the line, and that's good. That's a really good sign, because there are other Ducks young players who did not do that.
Yeah,
and we will get to them. Let's talk about. Speaking of young players, you know what I just realized, Jake? You and Nick Deslauriers are born like maybe 2 months apart, or something like that.
Yeah, I know.
So just, it's not a bad thing. But anyway, so what are you giving Nick Deslauriers a grade here?
Also, we should mention on Comtois, he's going to play for the World Canada in the World Championships. So going to be interesting to see what he can do there. Nick Comtois. Nick Comtois. Nick Deslauriers. It's hard because my expectation's so low for him.
I give him a C-. I think he was still pretty bad, but he was actually like decent defensively.
I'm going to go with a D.
Okay. I mean, what's your expectation for him though?
My expectation, I mean, that's I guess the issue here, but I think he was still worse than that. My expectation, and I guess maybe I should put it like this. He was actually
better this year defensively than he was last year.
My expectation for anyone on the fourth line is to be a replacement level player. And I think okay, is your expectation now the role based on the role they play or the player themselves? I think it needs to be a mix.
Because now, see, this is why I stayed away from drawing that hard of a line on my grades. Damn. Because there's got to be room for subjectivity.
Yep.
C- isn't a great grade for me. Like it's just, he was fine. He wasn't like, if you compare him to like Derek Grant, he wasn't that bad. And so I'm giving him maybe a charitable grade. If you told me like D+, I wouldn't hate it either. But I think like there's at least something you can point to with Nick Deslauriers that matters at 5-on-5.
Yeah,
He's just a total black hole at even or at offensively.
Which is funny because if you look at numbers, he actually does a decent job at getting his own shot,
Kind of,
but
kind of. Like
decent,
I
decent,
looked at those numbers and they're
decent,
not
decent.
decent. Might be a push.
The issue there is that nothing happens outside of him shooting.
Well, that's the thing. Regardless of him shooting by himself, he just doesn't like when he's out there. There's just the Ducks are not attacking.
He gets his own shots, and then the puck just goes the other way.
But I will give him credit for like being a well above replacement in terms of his defensive game. So I think that a little shout out. It's okay. It's okay to look at things not always with the narrative in mind. Okay.
Real quick, someone asked, I think, how many goals he had. 5 goals this year. Delorier did. So I don't know if that's something that you value, but I mean, he had 5 goals. I mean, goals obviously matter, but he had 5 goals, shot 7.7%.
Yeah, I'm not really grading. Like, he's not a guy I'm grading on production.
Agreed.
Because that's not what he's being paid to do. Okay, this was maybe the hardest one for me to grade, and I kind of settled on maybe a bit of a kicking the can down the road, a bit of a punt. Jamie Drysdale. So here's the issue with Jamie Drysdale. He had flashes where he looked awesome, looked very in control, confident with the puck. But the numbers are just so atrocious, right? And he was just awful defensively when you look at the numbers. But by the same token, he probably should have been in junior this season. Like, if the world had been normal this year, a teenage defenseman would likely not have been playing in the NHL. And so I settled on C because I think all things considered, despite some of those numbers, because even though they really tanked playing with Manson, he was still bad away from Manson as well. So I felt like C was just kind of like I didn't want to be too harsh, but I didn't want to give him anything more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where somewhat the expectation does come in. I think that a B is what I would give him because.
But what is the B based on though? That's my issue. The B is, what do you have to point to?
The B is based on I think that he wouldn't have. He obviously
there's no objective basis for giving him a high grade. That's the problem.
Let me reason this out here for you. Let me see. Let me see if I can talk my way out of this one or around this one right here.
Okay.
Sure. I completely agree. His numbers, his on ice product, everything like that, not great this season. Mm-hmm. But I think if the expectation for him was, I didn't even think we would see him in the NHL, let alone even have flashes of where he looked competent at the NHL level. And overall, the numbers are not great. I completely agree with that. But wait. But I think if you are trying to grade him along the lines of going with expectation, I think he was above what I expected of him because I didn't even expect him to be in the NHL level and look competent in his flashes. And so that's where this B is coming from. And maybe it would be a B minus if I was giving out minus and pluses, but I'm refusing to do that right now.
That's dumb.
But I would give him a B based on the expectation. I think you're correct that his numbers aren't great. I think that
they're bad. Yes,
they're
awful.
Up. His RAPM numbers are on the screen, so everyone can see. Defensively not good. But I think overall, when you're looking at the expectation for him was essentially to be in juniors this past year, probably be 2 years out from the NHL, and to even come in and have games where he did look extreme. He had some games, like, don't forget, where he looked like he was the best defenseman on the ice for the Ducks.
And that's the thing. Like, that's where my C is coming from because I watched him play and I was very impressed by him. Like, I don't want people to get the impression I'm down on Drysdale. It's just if I'm being an objective observer, I can't just completely disregard.
Yeah, and real quick, Yakubian's asking if we can explain RAPM. Essentially, here's the basics of it. It is essentially trying to isolate the player for their own individual contribution to,
and then it's standardized. So comparing it to like
a replacement level player. So
exactly.
So all of these different categories that you're seeing on the screen with goals per 60 is goals for per 60. Expected goals for per 60 is looking at shot quality for per 60. Corsi for percentages or Corsi for per 60 is shot quantity for, expected goals against, shot quality against, and Corsi against is shot quantity against. And so it's evaluating this player and their individual contribution versus a replacement level player. Anything negative is below, anything above is or anything plus is above replacement level.
Yeah, think about it of like how far or how far above or below are you from an average player, a replacement level player, and then those statistics try to isolate from the team.
Yes.
So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good.
And I think the other issue here with looking at some of these numbers is the fact that he was on the right side as compared to the left, or sorry, left side as compared to the right.
Yeah, but even on the right, he was. I mean, the numbers weren't good. So, but like, it's clear that playing. I think that. So what I've kind of settled on with that is the issue maybe was that he was playing on his off wing, but it was mostly just playing with Manson because Manson, we'll get to his grade. Not pretty. We'll get
Not
into that
so.
explanation.
I think maybe I think definitely I'm being a bit generous here.
I
There's
mean, that's fine. Like, I think there's definite reason for optimism with him. Like, I'm still high on him as a prospect,
yeah,
but like, if I'm just evaluating what he did, like, for him to get a passing grade with me is actually good because
sure.
I'm still kind of overlooking to a degree the numbers. Okay, let's move forward here. This was kind of an interesting one because I haven't really spent too much time thinking about this player. Bit of a smaller sample, but Hayden Fleury. So I actually I actually took a look as Jake is like fixing his setup over here.
I had forgot to turn on my ring light until right now.
Well, there you go. So Hayden Fleury, I gave him a B plus because he was actually very good defensively relative to the team. He had the best expected goals against per 60 of any Ducks regular defenseman. Overall numbers were pretty decent to strong, despite playing a lot of minutes with Drysdale. He was really good when he played with Shattenkirk. My only kind of demerit with him was that, like, some of the narratives you heard of him having this untapped value of him, kind of potentially being more than what he
Mm-hmm.
was what we had seen in Carolina. I don't think that really came to fruition, and I don't know if it will. But my expectations were kind of minimal, and he surpassed them quite a bit. And watching him play, he wasn't spectacular, but he was solid, and that really bared out in the numbers.
Yeah, I think that. Sorry, what did you give him again?
B plus.
I'd give him a B. I think that you're pretty spot on. I mean, I right now have his player card open for this past season. I'll jump right in now to the single season for him in terms of RAPM, just to be able to get that on the screen. But he was solid for the Ducks. I mean, he definitely he was decent in terms of defensive metrics, things like that. And so I think that this is a situation where I think you're spot on that he doesn't necessarily have that untapped offensive potential that we were kind of that we were told that maybe he would have. But I think that he's a guy that could be a decent second pairing guy to stabilize things for the Ducks moving forward.
Yeah, he could be Yanni Hockenpah.
Yeah. No, I think well,
he'll be better than that.
yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of funny. Speaking of Yanni Hockenpah, his partner in crime this year, Cam Fowler. So to me, I thought this was going to be a slam dunk A when I started kind of just doing this. I thought, oh, there's no way I'm going to give him anything but an A. And I did end up giving him an A, but it wasn't quite as clear cut as I thought it was going to be because even though his numbers were pretty strong across the board, they weren't like elite level. They weren't amazing, but they were very solid in a bad situation playing with Yanni Hockenpah. What impressed me the most was just that he followed up a great year last year, which I didn't think he had in him, with another solid campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said,
Well,
carrying Yanni Hockenpah.
yeah.
And also what was interesting with Fowler this year is his like zone exit numbers that he's traditionally really good
We're
at.
not great this year, surprisingly.
They were bad.
Yeah.
But he still was solid overall despite that. And
Yeah.
he was okay on the power play. So that's why I still gave him an A because I felt like my expectations were kind of maybe a little tempered, and he's managed to surpass them.
It's honestly it's kind of funny looking at his WAR percentage because he's in the 46th percentile and it's up right now for this past season. But I feel like a decent amount of that is due to the PK, and he was not good on the penalty killing. I think that's one thing we can agree on, that was a
And he also took a lot of penalties.
Yes, he did. And I think that really negatively impacted his WAR total because for anyone out there that doesn't know, WAR is essentially this combination of your even strength offense, even strength defense, power play, penalty killing, finishing, and penalties. Those are the big factors into kind of all of this number here. But when you kind of isolate his numbers at 5-on-5, which I think you and I tend to evaluate the most, especially with this past season for the Ducks, I think he was really, really good for this Ducks team. And I right now have up his RAPM chart. And you can see kind of how the goals for went towards him, how he was great at getting shot attempts for, and limiting shot attempts against. And the fact that he did it with Yanni Hockenpah for most of the year, he played with Jacob Larson near the end of the season, and he's continued this kind of trend of elevating D partners. And that's something that maybe might not show up in terms of a wins above replacement model. But you look at every single defenseman he's played with these last couple seasons, their numbers significantly drop off when they go away from Cam Fowler. And so I think that's something that is noteworthy that should be brought up. And I think that's why I would give him an A.
Yeah, like an A felt right after kind of thinking about it more. Because at first, when I was looking through everything, I was like, "Huh, this is not the story I was expecting to
Mm-hmm.
be told." But the more you dug in, the more it started to make more sense. Okay, let's unless you had anything else on Fowler.
Nope.
Okay, let's move on to Ryan Getzlaff. So I gave him a B plus, and I thought I would give him higher actually when I went into this, but he was good. Like actually, his game improved from last year. Like he had a bounce back year. His defensive impact actually jumped up, and at 35 to still be a positive in play driving and to be improving year over year, even if it's a bounce back, to me, that's very impressive. And look, he had to carry guys like Max Jones around the ice a lot, played with Troy Terry. And although Troy Terry's good, he's not a finisher. And I think that to me is why his production was kind of suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
He generated his best offensive like generation was with Comtois, but Eakins just and with Henrique, but Eakins kind of went away from that after a while. So to me, Getzlaff is still good. He's still a
Yeah.
guy who can help a team.
And I now have up his player card, and you're seeing obviously 27th percentile in terms of WAR. And this is where I like to dive a little bit deeper on things. And you can see if you look purely at his even strength offense and defense, he's still really, really good. And sure, the production fell off, but like you mentioned this to me before the show. You had me guess who was his most common, or who was the player he had the most time with, and it was
Yeah,
Max
like
Jones.
like on his wing. Yeah, it was Max Jones.
And so that's not exactly a guy. Max Jones is a guy who's not exactly known for finishing the puck.
Yeah, and
And
it's funny because their on ice shooting percentage wasn't bad, but you know that it's probably being elevated by Getzlaff to a
yes,
degree.
and so he's a guy where I look at his play, even strength offense, even strength defense, and look at that how he did there, and also as I jump now to evolving hockey's and RAPM charts. And if I'm remembering correctly, as I pull it up, he was really, really good in terms of RAPM numbers for this past year. And not as good as actually I remembered off the top of my head, but still above replacement level, significantly above replacement level defensively. And so I think you're spot on. I think it's hard to give him an A mainly because of the fact that
Well,
um,
you kind of
uh,
you kind of have to produce to get into the A territory. Like there is like you have to be really good, and I think he was great in his role, what the expectation was, but you still got to consider what the overall impact was, and it wasn't necessarily this elite level impact. And it does bode well if they bring him back for another year because I think he can potentially still contribute for them. So we'll see. But I just came away from this little exercise thinking, yeah, Ryan Getzlaff is still a good player, and that's important for this
yeah,
team.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Anything else in Getzlaff?
No, I mean his production obviously fell off, but I mean, what do you expect from a guy
Yeah.
that is 35 years old?
Well, tell that to the people that are saying he's done.
Yeah, he's not done. He's still like here's the thing. He's still a good second or third line center for this team.
Tell that to his coach who's putting him on the wing with Derek Grant.
He's probably gonna end up getting a contract for a 1 year deal at 2 or 3 mil, something along those lines.
I'm calling it now. Ryan Getzlaff has a bounce back season points wise next year.
Yeah.
Like he was
Well,
suppressed
and
this
how
year.
much of this do we want to just mention that this was a 56 game season? Like this is a small sample size season.
Yeah, I mean there is some criticism for him in terms of how bad the power play was because he is like relied upon for that. But it's at 35.
Should you be relying upon a 35-year-old to drive your power play though?
Exactly. So that's the thing. That's why I settled on a B plus. Felt really good about it. Feel great about it. If you love having pluses and minuses. Oh, is it just because you hate plus minus? Is that why you don't want it next to your letter grade?
But I mean, isn't it that plus minus is like a good stat? It tells you what it means or something like that. I don't know.
It really isn't. Okay.
No, it's a bad
Let's go to John Gibson. So I gave him a C minus. C minus. How do you feel about my C minus?
I think that's no. I think that's way too high.
Too high? Well, so here's the thing. If you compare like his GSAX, which was about -4, to his expected save percentage, he had, I think, the 81st or 82nd ranked expected save percentage out of 92 eligible goalies. So he was in one of the worst possible environments for goalies. And even though he was below expectation, like he wasn't that far below it necessarily. And so he was actually slightly better than how he played last season. Still a very long way from where he was, but I feel like C
And
minus is comfortable to me.
so it depends. I guess this kind of
Like
comes.
I wasn't expecting him to be a Vezina goalie this
So I
year.
guess this comes back to what his expectation is. And for me, I would say the expectation for John Gibson is to be an above replacement level goalie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean,
and I don't think he was that this year.
so what are you giving him?
I'm giving him a D. And this isn't necessarily to say John Gibson's a bad goalie. He had a rough season.
Yeah, I mean, D isn't crazy. Like if you told me D, I'm not gonna fight you super hard on it. I think he's a victim of expectation because I think that if you just look at what he did, he wasn't he wasn't good, but he wasn't like this awful goalie either. So
He was
but it
he was below replacement level. I think that is an adequate way to describe
he was
the season.
he was, but he was just playing in a bad environment.
Yes, 100%
Like
agree.
that's the thing that we can't like. That's the problem with looking at below or above expected is you have to consider what is he below or above. Because if he's slightly below a very bad, very adverse environment for a goalie to perform, that's still not great, but it's maybe not quite as bad as if he was, underperforming a good environment.
Yeah, and I
So,
mean, we had Kat Silverman on the podcast last offseason. She even mentioned
like these
that
numbers aren't gospel
no,
for goalies.
there are issues with them, and so they're not gospel. But she mentioned this on the show that for comparing goalies to each other, they're not the best ever. But if you want to compare a goalie to himself,
Yeah.
that is something that you can do. And now, granted, the environment can change, and his numbers significantly fall off once Dallas Eakins comes into play here. So maybe there is something there with the new
he
system.
did play. I think and if we're going to do the comparison himself, he did play a little better this year than last year. So
Yeah, but I still think if the expectation for him was to be one of the top 10 goalies in the league, he wasn't that.
I mean, what is that expectation based on? That's something that was like 2-3 years ago now.
Well, I think that was based on the fact that he had a long off season to recuperate, the fact that he was going to come back, and the fact that he's paid as if he's a top 10 goalie in the league.
I feel like there were a lot of players that had that narrative too of like, okay, long off season, and then it just didn't happen. Like Erik Karlsson is one of them. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, maybe I'm being a little generous here.
Yeah,
that's just where I landed. You saying a D is not crazy. If you had said F, I'd be like, okay, that's
so DB Lowry. I think this is exactly how I feel about it. That it's like Gibson was bad this year. He had a down season, but it's also you can also say that he wasn't the reason the Ducks were as bad as they were. Him having a bad season could be.
It didn't help.
No,
it wasn't their get out of jail free card that they've had in the past.
I mean, which is what honestly I think if you were to ask the Ducks what their path to success was this past year, it would have been John Gibson playing at Vezina level. Like I think the Ducks' expectation,
which is such a bad strategy.
But I think the Ducks, like if you were to ask Bob Murray, like what this team would have looked like if they were to make the playoffs, it would be essentially the Winnipeg Jets, which is a horrible horrible team at 5-on-5 that just basically relies upon insane goaltending. And the one thing the Jets do have that the Ducks don't, though, is a lethal power play due to having some high end talent.
Yep. So C minus D. He wasn't that good this year. No question about it.
Yep.
Okay. Next up, this should be fun. Derek Grant. So I gave Derek Grant a high grade. I gave him a D minus.
Yeah, he gets an F from me, dog.
I gave him a D minus.
Fine. I'll change that. Go for it though.
I mean, I gave him a D minus because he was still a very good penalty killer this year. Like he was also one of the few Ducks that wasn't terrible at finishing, which I guess I'll give him a little credit for. The problem with him is he just brought no value at 5-on-5, 0 value at 5-on-5. But because and the thing is, I'm not going all the way to F because at least he brought you something, which was the PK. And so, and also, I mean, again, this is not to get him completely out of trouble here, but he should not have been playing at the level that he should not have been playing against the guys he was playing against.
He should not have been playing against Nathan McKinnon.
He was like Derek Grant should have been used as just a true fourth liner, and he actually wasn't by Dallas Eakins. He was given defensive responsibility. So I feel like maybe it's a little harsh to give him an F because he's just playing. He's completely miscast in this team, in the system. But D minus is still not good.
Yeah, I think I'll make the exception and give him a D minus. With the only reason why he's not an F is due to the fact that you are correct. He was okay on the penalty kill, but I right now have
he was great on the penalty.
Yeah, I have it. I have his RAPM chart up right now. It's always hilarious to look at it because he breaks the axis.
Yeah, he does. Like he was awful at 5-on-5.
Like he just bled shot attempts against. Like It's hilarious. And somehow he still is above replacement level in terms of actual goals for, which just shows even with being horrible, he still somehow got lucky, which goes to the finishing aspect of it. But I
Yeah.
mean, you have to change the access to 4 or
Yeah.
access to 4 as compared to 3 to be able to see how bad he was.
And also, like, the penalty differential wasn't good, which kind of goes to playing without the puck so much, defending so much, like mistakes. He was definitely not a positive for this team this year. I think that part of the issue is the Ducks signing him to a 3-year deal. It's Dallas Eakins giving him a prominent role. Like, these are all things that are kind of outside of his control. And look, he didn't live up to that billing, but I'm not letting him completely off the hook either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, he was bad. If we had to say the worst Duck of the season, I actually did say he was the least valuable player last episode. So
yeah,
there you go.
I have a lower grade than him on this list. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have an F. I think that I'm giving him that D- because of him being good on the penalty
Okay.
kill.
I think this is my first D plus. I think this is my first D plus. I don't know. If you're keeping track, let me know if I'm wrong. But my first D plus, Danton Heinen. So here was my expectation for Danton Heinen, that he would come in, contribute at 5-on-5, and just kind of be a positive for this team. And if you look at his numbers, like, he just wasn't that. Like, if you squint hard enough, maybe you'll come away saying he was just okay. He was fine on the penalty kill. He chipped in a little bit offensively at the end. Did improve a little bit over last year in terms of like his defensive play, but he just wasn't that good this year.
How
and I
much
feel
of
and,
that?
and I feel kind of silly. And he played like 43 games. So
No.
it's not as if he didn't play. I just want to clarify that because I thought of that. How much of this is him being jostled around by Dallas Eakins? But he still played the grand majority of the games.
13 games and was in and out. It took him a long time to get actual looks at various different
Yeah,
times.
but like I feel like we probably overplayed a little bit how much
Potentially.
time he missed. Like he still played over 4/5 of the season. So anyway, he just wasn't that good. I gave him a D plus. Like my expectation was he'd be good, that he'd kind of force people's hand. He didn't do that at all, and here we are. Tell me I'm wrong.
I mean, I'm looking now at his numbers, and I mean, here's the thing on him, and I would agree with you. I think I might go, if I'm gonna keep it, and no pluses or minuses.
Yeah, there we go.
Here's the tough thing. Do I go
This
C?
is the limitation.
Do I go C or D? Because I think when I'm saying C, I think looking at Danton Heinen, it depends on, I guess, on what you expected from him. And I expected him to be essentially a replacement level player.
And he wasn't that.
He was, yeah, fair. He was slightly below.
Yeah.
So do I put that in the C range or the D range?
I gave him a D plus.
No pluses or minuses, so I'm gonna go with a C.
Wow, that is so charitable.
No pluses
so
or minuses,
charitable.
so I'm going with a C.
Yeah, I thought long and hard about giving a C minus to a C, and I in good faith could not do it because he was very underwhelming this season.
Fair. Like I said, I'm on the lower end of the C with him, but
yeah, and I'm not saying he was bad this year. Like he wasn't this awful player, but like relative to expectation, maybe relative to how much we were frustrated about him not playing, I kind of feel like an idiot now in hindsight because like his numbers just aren't good. So yeah, D plus, Danton Heinen. Sorry about it. Okay, here's an interesting one. Here's one that we already talked about early in the show. Adam Henrique. Where did you land on Adam Henrique? I'll just tell you what I give him. I give him a C. Roughly 20 goal pace in an 82 game season. Early finishing woes, but he still shot over 17% at 5-on-5. Didn't drive offense, struggled defensively. Kind of a season you would expect though at H31. Like some good, some bad. And he was just fine. He was fine relative to expectations.
And here's the thing with Adam Henrique. Adam Henrique has always kind of been an above-level finisher. He's always been a guy that, I mean, he shot 15%, but I'm going to pull up his entire thing. But his average shooting percentage over the course of his career is 15%. Like that is normal for him, and he's a guy that does get good looks. And so part of that 15% is a mix of him getting a bit lucky, but it's also a mix of where his expected goals are coming from. And
there is such a thing as shooting talent. And he has that.
Yes, there is shooting talent, but I think that a good part of it is that also he's getting looks in good spots. And so I think from a team that was offensively starved to have another guy that could finish at 15% and continue to do that, I think I'm going to give him a B.
Really? Okay.
I mean, I think that he was fine. And I think he was above what you expected as a 30-year-old for him to be on a 20 goal pace. in
Yeah,
the course of an 82 game season. Like,
I mean, I think to me what he did this year is almost exactly what I would expect.
fair,
You
but
know,
I mean, here's the thing: if he had a 20 goal season,
hmm
like a 20 goal season on this Ducks team in an
hmm
82 game season,
yeah.
I think that's a B.
Well, the thing is, that's if you're only judging him on that. Like there are other elements that I'm looking at, like
He's
his
one of
five
the
on
few
five
guys that
game.
can score though, and so I'm gonna give him.
So you're
If I'm
so
gonna
you're
give
basing your grade purely on goals.
if I'm no, but if I'm giving Comtois an A because of the fact that he's giving him an A based on the fact that
Well, Conto was better at driving offense than Henrique was.
sure, but Henrique was still about replacement level in terms of generating offense, and still had some solid expected goal
Yeah.
numbers. He was like, here's the
Dif-
thing with Henrique. Henrique
Different
defensive
expectation though. Different expectation.
fair. For me, he's a B. For me, he's a B.
Okay.
He's on a 20 plus goal pace as a 31-year-old.
And by the way, C is not like some bad grade.
No,
It's a passing
hey,
grade.
you're the one giving me a hard time for giving him a B.
I just think he wasn't like that good to me. He wasn't like B range. Like if you had told me C plus, sure, but like B range is a little high. But that's fine. That's fine. Like it's not a crazy take either. Not a crazy
No.
take. It's not Galaxy brain. It's not the worst. It's not the worst take you've had.
Wow.
So there you go. Little olive branch for you. Um, okay. Do you want to talk about Max Jones? I actually this was one that I couldn't really land on, but I'm gonna land here since I had two grades written down. I'm gonna give him a D plus. I think
Yeah.
he showed some okay flashes of improvement, but didn't really find a role, like a niche in terms of his play style. His production, arguably, like we were talking about, propped up by playing with Getzlaff. Finishing rate was still not that high. And the hope slash expectation at this age range is that he's taking steps forward every year, or at least some things are getting better. And for him, there's just not really anything that you can point to with him. So that's why, to me, it was a disappointment. My expectation was that he would continue to build, and he didn't really do that, which is why I kind of have to take him out of the C range and go to D plus.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give him a D also. I mean, I right now have him up on the screen. I mean, Max Jones is, I guess maybe even below, but he's essentially the exact type of player that I would qualify as a replacement level player.
He's also 23, which is kind of a concern because like this is becoming who he's going to be, right? Like slowly but surely. And so he's got maybe a couple more years where you're expecting like a big
because I mean, we've seen with aging curves, your prime production year starts I think around like 24, 25 and just you basically hit it then and then keep that going until about 29 years old. And so
you're supposed to be in the incline in this range.
Yes, there is the ability to have some increase in scoring over that time based upon variance and things like that. Essentially like you can see that flux or that push up. But I think overall looking at Max Jones, I mean, he's a replacement level player to me. I mean, he's a bottom six player. He's below replacement level even this past year. And I'm going to jump right now to the RAPM chart before we kind of move on from him. But I really just, I mean, if we're going to talk about kids in terms of taking steps,
he just didn't.
He didn't. And I don't know if I would necessarily say he took a step back, but he's just basically the same spot that he's at.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like with the younger players, I think my curve was a little more generous because I am factoring in the improvement season over season. Like maybe that's why Comtois ended up being an A, and like a player like Henrique didn't because I'm giving him credit for the improvement. With Jones, like there's just nothing. Like there's just nothing that you can really point to.
No,
and that's frustrating. Talking about frustrating, let me introduce you to my friend Jacob Larson, my only F on this list. I mean, this is impressive because he was already terrible last year, got worse this year, got worse defensively, worse offensively, bad in every category, added no value to this team. Like even Derek Grant, you can at least say, look at that penalty kill. With Jacob Larson this year, there was essentially nothing. Maybe the only thing you can say is that he wasn't one of the worst penalty takers. His penalty differential wasn't that bad when he's on the ice, but like this, it's a concern now. Like he's 23 and he's not getting any better, arguably worse. And I just couldn't give him anything higher than an F. I'm sorry.
Yeah, an F's the right answer. I mean, he was horrible. He was absolutely horrible. I mean, the only time in the entire season where he looked okay was next to Cam Fowler
competent.
Was next to Cam Fowler against the LA Kings, and that's it. And so a lot going for him in those situations that doesn't exactly bode well for kind of evaluating him having the increase.
And
So
like, how good did he really look too in those stretches? Like, that's the thing
he
is
looked
like,
good.
you look fine. I just think that even this isn't even like an eye test versus analytics thing. Like, if anyone who watches him play is like, yeah, like he misses assignments, bad reads, like he's just all over the place defensively and isn't really giving you much. He's giving you nothing on the other end to counteract that. So,
The only thing he's done well is he didn't take that many penalties this year.
yeah, exactly.
That is it. I mean, so there is that. Let me just really quickly before we move on show everyone his RAPM charts. So you can all see, yeah, everything's negative. Everything's negative.
Okay, let's bring the mood back up though. This is one that again, my expectation going into it was I was going to be probably a little more contrarian, go lower than the narrative, but I ended up actually going higher than I expected. I gave Isaac Lundestrom a B plus. I gave him a B plus, and I did that because I thought that if you compared him again this year to last year, showed some significant improvement in his defensive game. Like his metrics defensively were actually good this year. Like you were talking about, above replacement level. Showed some flashes of offensive potential. I am a little skeptical of that though.
I mean, it was basically all in that one hat trick game.
Yeah, but I mean, still, we're talking about flashes, and
Yep.
he established himself as a decent to good penalty killer, which is a potential niche for him. You know, and the expectation. This is the other thing. The last thing for him is the expectation was also that he might not even be in the NHL this year. So for him to come up and be somewhat of a contributor at age 21, that's why I felt really comfortable giving a B plus, because he really outperformed what I thought he was going to do this year.
Yeah, I think a B is probably fair. I think that's probably where I'd go. I'd probably be in the C to B range, but I'd probably be closer to B, so I'll go there. The one thing that I was looking at today that I found actually kind of intriguing and interesting with him is looking into some of Corey Schneider's manual tracking data, shutdown line on Twitter. Really, really good stuff. Isaac Lundestrom, outside of like Terry and Zegras, is the best transition player on the Ducks. And
well, because he's one of those guys who doesn't
he doesn't
like
dump
to
it in. Yeah, he
exactly.
carries it. He carries it in. The issue is that he doesn't really do anything with it once he's in the offensive zone.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that's good is that he does make a concerted effort to not dump it in, to get it into the zone. And so I think that that's one stride for him forward. I think that he's the guy that you think maybe took a step. I don't think that there's a narrative somewhat surrounding him that he took this big step offensively. I don't think that's really.
It's actually the other way around. He got a lot better defensively, which is interesting. Which is funny because I feel like that is actually closer to his billing in his draft year. Was like kind of a shutdown
Once
guy.
again, setting realistic expectations for players is important here, folks. And so, as we've talked about a bunch. And so I think that with Isaac Lundestrom, I think, yes, he was good this year. He took the step forward defensively that was expected. And I think that you and I both had him pegged for at best probably being about a fourth line center going into the season as his long-term projection. I think that he took a step to make us adjust that. And I think I would say he probably is going to be like a third line center if this trend continues for him. A kind of low offense ceiling, solid defensively, isn't going to harm you and kind of helps limit chances out there when he's on the ice as a third line center.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think that what's most encouraging is that he's showing a big step at a young age. So like that's just generally a good sign for young players if there's like that kind of
here's a question
that
for you.
Stepwise improvement.
As I'm writing my expansion draft article, so I'm gonna have to piece this together. Do you protect Lundestrom? Is he an instant protect?
I mean, they don't have a lot of guys that make me feel that way. So maybe he's a guy that you want to protect just because untapped value potential there. You want to see where it goes. I don't know. I haven't really thought about the expansion draft too much. That's your job.
Yep.
I mean, is he for you? Is that where this is going?
I don't know yet. I haven't gotten to, like I said, I'm going to have to piece this together and think it through. I'm in the process of it. I'm thinking it through. I think he is an auto protect for me though, based upon the guys available to be protected.
Yeah.
The question becomes whether you protect him. Because here's where I'm at with it. I'm pretty positive the Ducks are going to go 4 D-men, leaving them 4 forward. So you protect Raquel, Terry, Lundestrom, and then one of Steele, Jones, Hein, and Milano. And so I think Lundestrom has to be one of those 4 guys. I really don't foresee myself putting one of those guys that afterwards I mentioned above of him. And Isaac Lundestrom is eligible to be taken. This is actually clarity that I received today from Cap Friendly. I obviously their tools up to date. I just want a clarification on exactly what defined a first or second year pro. So essentially, anyone that's not a first or second year pro is eligible. What is defined as a year of professional experience for the expansion draft is if you're 18 or 19 years old, it's 11 NHL games. If you are 20 or older, then it is one NHL, AHL, or European professional game if you are under contract. Isaac Lundestrom first year when he was 18 played 15 games, making that count as 1 year, and this would have been his third professional season as a result of that, which is why he is expansion draft eligible. And that same season, Max Comtois only played 10 games, which is why Comtois is not eligible because that did not count then.
Yeah, so everyone check out that article once Jake finishes it.
Sometime this week. Sometime this week.
Keep it locked into our website. Okay, let's we have about 5 to 6 more players to get through. Okay. So I feel confident we'll get through them and give everybody their fair time in the limelight. Maybe we can keep this one shorter. Josh Manson didn't play a lot this year. When he did play, he was terrible. I guess he did somewhat produce offensively. He had like 7 points. I give him a D-.
D.
He was just B?
D.
Oh, D. Okay,
D as in dog.
B. I almost fell out of my chair when I thought I heard B. I almost had a panic attack. He was just so bad, and I really think the Ducks may end up regret not trading him. We'll see.
And how much do we factor in the negative light his injuries being his own fault?
Well, one of the notes I wrote down was poor judgment.
Yeah.
Like, I think he had some poor judgment this year. Easy for me to say. I get all that. Like, this is probably an unpopular take, but like, he's really important to this team. Putting yourself in harm's way like he did in those fights is just like,
yep.
Gotta maybe be a little more calculated.
And I think I don't necessarily ever want to blame a player for getting injured because I don't think that's necessarily fair.
No,
but I think that it should be mentioned the fact that
it's the risk calculation.
Two of his injuries came from non-hockey players. Like I think that is something important that he put himself into that position in those those plays not within the whistles, and he got injured twice during it, and that knocked out a decent amount of his season. And so I think that in the same way that you kind of give players a knock for taking poor penalties, for poor decision making with that, I think that you have to give Josh Manson the same type of thing with when you're evaluating him with those decisions that he made to jump in and take those fights. And he's too important to this team. Now, granted, as I say that, we're going to say he wasn't great when he was on the ice, but I mean, still the alternatives were essentially Yanni Hakanpää playing in an elevated role, and Hakanpää was good actually.
I mean, Hakanpää was better.
Yeah, Hakanpää was actually better, but still, my point is that the decision making wasn't great. And as you can see, when you look at the RPM, when you looked at his player card, 18th percentile this past season for WAR. By the way, Felix, I've been showing this current season only from JFresh. And so yes, by the way, all these player cards from JFresh. Go subscribe to his Patreon if you can. They are
worth it.
Absolutely worth it. To be able to dive into some of these numbers, understanding it, he gives you great stuff there.
Okay, this is one that we may have a disagreement on. I don't know where you'll land.
I think I know where this is going.
Ricard Raquel.
Oh no, that's not where I thought you were going.
Where did you think I was going?
I thought you were. I wasn't realizing I don't have a list of the players alphabetically, so I thought we were going to Shattenkirk.
Oh, and we're one player away from Shattenkirk. Don't worry. So Ricard Raquel, I had a hard time evaluating him because if you just look at what he did, like just shooting wise, his impact on the game, he actually improved a little bit defensively over last year. His shooting metrics pretty much was all the same. And like, for example, his individual expected goals per 60, they were about the same as the years where he was putting up 30 goals. Like he was playing the exact same way, but he just had such brutal puck luck that none of that ended up really mattering in the end in terms of production. I wavered between C+ and B- because
it's tough because right now I have this player card, and this is the jarring thing. And I actually took a look at because JFresh has some information on Top Down Hockey Model where you can look at it and look at the different actual components and how they weight and factor into this WAR, because he's in the 1 percentile for WAR. And a big part of that is the 1% finishing and his negative shooting luck. And if you look at kind of the components and how they impact it, that negative shooting luck or negative shooting talent, or however you want to explain it, is such a big portion that it makes him essentially a negative player. And within this, they also have a shooting adjusted war percentage or something along those lines, where essentially it takes out shooting, and the purpose of doing it is so that you can look at it and you can essentially look at play driving and
Yeah.
look at how they were at 5-on-5. And if you do that, he's third on the Ducks in a
Well,
positive percentage. And
well, that's the thing. Yeah, I don't think he was like hurting this team when he was out there. Like he
no.
was not one of the issues in terms of just bringing them
The
down.
main thing to try to almost equate what you're seeing in these numbers right now and right here is that the looks that he got, if he would have finished that, the Ducks probably would have seen a big increase in their value over the course of the season.
But the thing is, to use your Henrique logic, like I feel like that is what he's graded on, is his production, right? And so like he is a goal scorer, and looking at that the other way,
so
he didn't
real quick,
do that.
by the way, this 1% is first percentile. It's not 1% shooting.
He's not being paid to be like just an okay
play driving. Well,
yeah,
he's only
like,
getting paid $3.6 million.
I understand, but like his role on this team is
Fair.
to be a scorer,
and so that's why I waver between C and B. I think maybe I'm being too nice by saying B, and I or biased, or however you want to do it. But I think that his underlying metrics are so good, and I think on Henrique, the one thing that I'll say is that
they're not quite as good.
Well, no, but on Henrique, I'll say this: he has a history of being able to shoot at 15% and continue that and keep doing that, and so that's kind of where I think the B comes in, even with the poor metrics. The poor metrics are there, but he's able to outproduce that and has been able to do that over the course of his entire career. Rickard Rakell, I think, on the other hand, this low shooting percentage, let me get it up very quickly right here, but his 6% shooting, I can guarantee you, with the amount of shots and the amount of looks, he's led the Ducks in shots on goal over the last 2 seasons. That's not going to continue. Like, that's eventually going to tick up. He's going to have 20-goal seasons again. And so I think if you're trying to evaluate the way he played, I think a B is valid. And the other thing is, how harsh are we being on him when he was also second on the team in points?
Yeah, well, 33 points led the team.
True.
But,
But fair. But, here's the thing. I think Rakell's a B. I think he's a B. I think you look at the shooting percentage, you look at things like that. He led the Ducks in shots on goal at 143. He led them in individual expected goals.
Yeah, to me, I'm comfortable in my C+, B- range, because I feel like that's a bit more accurate than a B. A B feels a little high.
Well, no pluses or minuses. Have to take a stand.
Limitations of your system.
Have to take a stand. Going with a B.
If I were to pick one of these two, I think I would lean towards B-, just because I do think, like, again, that lack of finishing really...
It does hurt. It did hurt them, like, no doubt. Like, if he ends up finishing a decent amount on the power play looks better. And you and I think it was on the Patreon episode, we talked about the power play in general, that sure, it's bad and they need to rework it. But it's not as bad as it actually seemed if you look at things like expected goals. They were generating more expected goals in the power play.
It was just like bottom tier instead of like, historically awful.
Yeah, it was like 20th as compared to 30th.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on here. Let's move on to, because we could do the Rakell thing all day. To the player you wanted to discuss, which maybe we'll have diverging opinions on this one too. Who knows? Kevin Shattenkirk. So I gave Kevin Shattenkirk a B+. I give him a high grade.
Damn! Wow! I'm actually shocked right now.
Well, here's the funny thing. His impacts at 5-on-5 were almost the same and better in some respects as Cam Fowler's, who we have showered with praise, and individually still actually kind of helped the power play. I think the big demerit for him is just the penalty taking. It was a legitimate issue that never really went away. Even until like the very last game of the season or second to last game, still taking penalties, but he provided value to this team. He was a stabilizing force on the back end. The penalties do take away from that, but I think a B+ to me is a fair grade.
Yeah,
so,
and real quick, up on the screen is your expected goals for
here's the question
your RPM for Rakell. The thing on Shattenkirk, and I'm actually going to agree with you. I think B is the correct answer.
Are you giving him a B or an A? Because you're stuck now. You can't do what I did.
Nah, I'm giving him a B. I'm giving him a B mainly because I can't give him an A because of the penalties. Like, you are 100% correct. Like, the penalties were a big issue. If I go back to his player card, he was in the first percentile in terms of penalties, which means the differential was so bad that it
was among the league's worst.
Yes.
But like maybe B+ is a little high. I am I'm not like, if you told me B plus is too high, I wouldn't think you're crazy,
Here's the
but I
funny
don't
thing
think you can
though.
go much
Are
lower.
you and I the only people that are saying this about Shattenkirk? You, me, and
Probably,
CJ? Because
probably.
it's funny how the narrative is
He
just
just,
the
I
narrative's
think,
so warped to the fact that
well,
it's the eye test versus numbers
he didn't
completely
put
with
up,
him.
points.
Well, he didn't put up points, and I think whenever a goal happened against, it was a play that he had that was a result of his play. It was a noticeable play from him. And the
Mhm.
thing is, those types of plays were noticeable, whereas what he did to drive offense the other direction, which was breaking the puck out of the zone, making very nice zone exits, things that are really
Kind of
under the radar type of things, they're not noticeable to the eye that much. And those are the things that he did so well. And that's why you see even strength offense and defense still being above the 50th percentile for him and
Yeah, I
really
mean,
helping him.
he was better defensively than Fowler.
Yeah, and I
Like,
mean, he was above replacement level in every single metric at 5-on-5 except for goals for per 60. And so that I think
yeah,
is the biggest thing.
that explains the difference in opinions right there.
Goals for percentage. I mean, you and I have talked about this. Look at a player that the perception doesn't meet reality, or the narrative doesn't meet with reality. And a lot of times it's, if you look at goals for percentage versus expected goals for percentage, that is exactly kind of the issue. And I mean, how much do you also knock him for the fact that he was brought in to be the savior of the power play? And
Well, I think that was probably an unrealistic expectation.
exactly. And I think you and I both tried to really adjust that when we talked about him being brought in.
And he still wasn't terrible on the power
No,
play. If
but
you just look at what he did, he was not terrible.
You and I both kind of mentioned this, that sure, he's probably going to help out the power play a bit, but the real kind of benefit to bringing in Shattenkirk is he's a solid player at 5-on-5s that's going to help drive offense for the Ducks. And I believe that basically when he was on the ice, the Ducks got more expected goals for than they did without him. And that shows you kind of the type of offense they did. He was a high event type of player. And when you have a high event type of player, there's going to be mistakes that happen against, but they drive offense towards the other side, which, as we mentioned, the Ducks took a big step back in terms of expected goals for per 60 this past season. And so the fact that they did that, even with adding Shattenkirk who helped, like, that's kind of jarring when you think about it overall.
Yeah, I agree. Another guy whose results are jarring, not in a good way, Sam Steele, who I gave a D minus. This is what's concerning. Yes.
Can I give him an F? Is that too harsh?
I mean, okay. I tried to go all the way in with F. I tried. I wanted to give him an F. But when I kind of peeled back the layers, like, these were the issues. First of all, defensive game got worse. Like,
offensive game was bad also.
Like, there was very marginal improvement and offensive play driving, very marginal, but no real individual improvement in that area. He wasn't necessarily awful, like in a Larson sense, but there were just no clear signs of progress from a guy who was already pretty poor to begin with, and no real strengths also coming to the forefront. So I gave him a D minus, because, like, despite how underwhelming he wasn't like completely terrible. But if you want to give him an F, sure, go for it. I'll let you be the one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to give him an F. And the main reason here is that really the only thing that he did good this year was essentially shooting. As you have up on the player card, it's finishing at 71%. And the issue is when you think about his goals, there were a good amount of his goals that would account for finishing that he had no part in. That went off of other people's stick, and that really skew the finishing to being more of a luck stat. And I think that that's a good way I would define that finishing percentage in the 71st percentile to more so be a luck percentile. And so the fact that, I mean, he's a guy that, I mean, if you had asked the Ducks, they were hoping that he could be the second line center for this team this year.
That's part of the reason why you can't give him a high grade, is because the expectation, the hope was that he would take a step, and he just did not at all.
He took the biggest step back, and so I think that is a big concern, because
and at age 23, it's like, again,
this is what he is. And I mean, here's the thing that is frustrating with Sam Steele from maybe a development perspective. He could have used some time in the AHL this season.
Well, go back to the year before. I mean, it feels like they've really kind of just decided that he's an NHL player. And it's funny, though, because this year, I feel like this is the most you've ever heard him be criticized by Dallas Eakins, right? Like he did get scratched. Like he didn't play for like almost 2 weeks at one point. And Dallas Eakins talked about maybe them needing to adjust expectations of what he'll be. So like, I don't think that they're blissfully unaware, but it just feels like they had a hand in getting to this point. Maybe I think
Yeah.
last year was the one to have him in the AHL.
And I think that he is now for next season not going to be. This season he was still waiver exempt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that's going to be the case next season. And so if they wanted to send him down to the AHL, this would have been the year to do it, and they still didn't. And I think
Yeah.
that is somewhat frustrating, seeing as they had no issue doing it with other players, and they had no issue prior seasons doing it with Comtois, doing it with Terry, scratching Terry, all these different things. And yet a Sam Steele, he was locked into the lineup for most of the
he wins
season.
faceoffs. Come on, you can't give that up. You can't give out that faceoff winning percentage. That's key. That drives winning.
God.
Saying all of this in
God,
complete jest.
I love that. By the way, I just love that Evolving Wild tweet about face-offs. The fact that that it just has all of the different games from the past, I don't know, what, 10, 15 years with all the goal differential and how none of it correlates at all to face-off percentage. It's just like a big bubble. It's so good. Basically, face-offs don't matter. They don't actually correlate to being a good team. They don't correlate to winning games. Winning the face-off battle does not mean you're going to win the game.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Okay. So we have a few more guys to get through. I'm going to go quick on this one. Anthony Stolarz, I gave him a B. I had very low expectations for him. Limited action, posted solid numbers. I just gave him a B.
Incomplete.
Okay.
Is
Fair
where
enough.
I'll go with it.
Okay. Moving on here. This will be a fun one. This is going to be all positive. Troy Terry. I gave him an A minus.
A. Straight A. Straight A.
That's fine. So here's what I'll say. This is my case for Troy Terry. I have 4 bullet points. He built on what he was already really good at and then added an offensive play driving element, which he didn't have the year before. All of his main strengths, though, either remained intact or improved. He showed he still might have another level to hit as a point producer. And this is kind of nebulous, but he did lead the team in slot passes per game. So this is from Instat. So he was actually, despite like maybe his point production or his finishing not being there, he was still good at getting the puck into dangerous areas, which is not like a common strength on this team. So A minus. I didn't want to give him an A because I compared him to like the guys who I gave him an A to, and I was a little uncomfortable, but he was very good this year. He was awesome.
94th percentile for even strength defense. I'm giving him an A. That's a great job from him defensively, and we started to see strides from him offensively also that really helped the Ducks.
He took a step forward, and that's the big key with these young players.
And if you look at, we've mentioned Corey Schneider's data of late, and he is one of the best Ducks in transition. He's one of the best Ducks in terms of shot attempts. He's or chance contribution. So both individual shot contribution along with shot assists. And so if you look at kind of that, him and Zegras are the 2 top guys for the Ducks. And that really checks out, and they didn't play with each other for a lot of the season. And so that kind of really shows you how good he was, that he was essentially the top contributor for the Ducks in terms of contributions to chances for this Ducks teams from an individual perspective, and how much he drove the offense for this team. And on top of that, how good he is at defensively. And part of the reason he's good defensively is that he's good in transition and gets the puck in the other team's zone and doesn't really come out. It doesn't come out that often. And so I think I need to give him an A.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I gave him an A minus, but A, it's totally fine. He was great. Like it really, and I think my favorite part about him being this good and about like us giving him high grades is that Dallas Eakins did not think he was good enough to be in the lineup in the beginning of the season. And like for him to go from that to Dallas Eakins saying he's one of the most responsible players in the team is just quite the glow up for Troy Terry. So there you go. Now this will be less glowing. I apologize. Maybe we'll make it quick. Maybe you'll give him an incomplete. Who knows? Alexander Volkov. I gave him a D. My expectations were very minimal for this player. I thought he was just a 4th liner, and I had no expectations. But despite that, he wasn't completely awful, but just didn't really show much of anything. I mean, he had like maybe a couple good games against San Jose when he first got traded, but outside of that, the numbers just weren't really impressive. He was actually kind of worse statistically with Anaheim than he was in Tampa Bay. Now, of course, you might say team effects, but he just didn't really add much positive value to this team and offensively or defensively. And look, again, minimal expectations, but I just can't sit here and tell you that he even met my expectations. I thought he would come in and be like an upgrade on the fourth line, and he wasn't really that.
Yeah, and I'll jump into this one sec, but Defend the Nest brought up that Cap Friendly said that Steele is waiver exempt still. Want to bring this up? Actually, the thing is, it's he has to complete 5 seasons to become waiver eligible. This is the 5th season, so starting next year, he does require waivers, and that's the big thing. And so on Volkov, I think I'd give him a D. I think you were pretty spot on there with everything. I mean, he was a guy that really gave a spot in an elevated role.
I mean, they gifted him an opportunity,
and he didn't do a whole lot with it. And it's basically kind of what we expected when I wrote my trade article about him. It was basically he's a guy that really is kind of a nothing player, fourth liner for the Ducks.
I mean, if he had been that, I would have given him a higher grade. And he wasn't that. He was
True.
a negative.
Yeah.
So,
real quick, O-Dog's asking, what about Milano and Silverberg? Seeing as you're driving this bus, I'm throwing that onto you.
I actually, so for complete transparency here, I didn't put Milano just because I felt like that sample was just like crazy small. I actually forgot about Silverberg.
We probably should do Silverberg. So
I forgot about Silverberg, which is really embarrassing. I don't know why I forgot about him, but it's because of all that time I spent thinking about Alexander Volkov. It just really took away. I mean, just kind of like thinking about it here with Silverberg, given where he's at in his career, his game offensively took a huge nosedive this year, but he was still very good defensively. And so to me, I would lean towards the B range. I think
I'm going to go. I think that's a bit high.
Okay. I mean, you gave Terry credit for being 94th percentile defensively. Silverberg was 86th percentile.
91st, actually. 91st percentile this past season.
Yeah.
But wait. But on Terry, it wasn't just defense. It was also the fact that
your logic is inconsistent.
It was also, as I added, the shot contribution, the chance contribution, the transition game, everything along that really contributed to offensively and everything like that for him. Silverberg, the issue is basically you're right. And the thing is, the numbers for Terry bear that out also with him being above average with driving offense. And Silverberg, not the case. Silverberg, fifth percentile in terms of even strength offense. 12,
that's what I said. Like
12th percentile in terms of penalty killing. And then if you're looking at play driving from an offensive perspective.
How much? Okay, let me ask you this. How much do you factor in the fact now that we know that he was playing with a bad hit, essentially?
That definitely factors in. And the thing is, that really plays a part because, I mean, if you think about it, being good defensively doesn't always, it's more so positioning based, I think, sometimes. And being in the right play, being in the right spot, things like that. Whereas offensively, especially as the game it becomes more of a transition type of game, you start to see guys needing to be able to skate. And if your hip is screwed up, that's really going to set you back. And so I think that's probably a potential reason for this. But I think evaluating him based on his season, I would give him a C. I think that's pretty fair. I think at expectation, as he's aging, the fact that he is still solid, still very good defensively, but just didn't give the Ducks anything offensively to the point where it caused negative value.
I mean, I'm comfortable with like a B minus.
That's fine.
I'm comfortable with that.
No pluses and minuses.
We're not hugely apart here. Okay, and then Sonny Milano. I mean, Sonny Milano was great. I mean, I did look at his numbers, and he was great in the limited amount of time he played. But it's just that sample was so tiny that it was just like too little to really draw a hard conclusion from. Okay, 2 more. I have 2 more here, unless I'm forgetting people, which I'm kind of hoping I did now, just for the randomness element of this show. Trevor Zegras. How do you grade Trevor Zegras?
How do we have 2 more?
Well, there's Trevor Zegras and Hampus Lindholm.
Okay, so this wasn't done alphabetically then.
Well, no, Zegras is the last one. Lindholm, I forgot, and you told me before we started. And
there we go. Because I was confused. I was like, wait, we're on Zegras. How are there more?
Okay. Well, anyway, Zegras, I give him an A. Yes. Actually.
Yes.
And to be fair, this is a contextual A. Like, his A is not the same as another guy's A, but my expectation of him, I didn't think he was going to come in and be this impactful right away offensively. And especially once he shifted to center, then I was like, wow, this guy's another level. Still a lot of work to do in the defensive end, but these are the kind of details that you would expect with a rookie coming in. And so overall, like he surpassed my expectations in a
Yeah.
huge way.
Yeah,
So I'm giving him
and honestly, I would kind of almost want to overlook his time as a winger. And I know that's hard to do when we're doing a player
yeah,
grade because
yeah.
he wasn't
I think that's being a little cherry picky.
it is, and I completely agree with that. But it's our podcast, it's my rules. I'm going to do whatever I want. And
Okay. I
I
mean, I'm
think
still giving him an A, by the way.
yeah,
Like I am factoring that in.
I think that he was put in a position to fail by being put on wing. The fact that he was treated with kid gloves, everything along those lines by the coaching staff when he was on the wing, and it really didn't put him in a position to succeed. And I think that's a big reason why production really didn't come from him when he was on the wing. Whereas once he came back up as a center, he just looked so much more confident, so much more comfortable. It was his natural position. And I mean, we could go on for days about the fact that they should have done that from the very beginning in terms of playing him as a center. But he played. I mean, what, he had 6 points in 7 games as a center. He tore up the AHL. I think I am high on Zegras. I did not expect him as a center to come up and just look that comfortable and that confident in that position and make that stark of a difference offensively for this team.
I mean,
and so that impact is why I'm giving him an A. And
it is interesting though with him that we don't apply the LA Kings caveat, because a lot of those, I mean, the games where he came up as a center were against the Kings.
Yes, but it was also going up against Anze Kopitar at times, and he still looked good. I think he looked good against the Blues, and he looked good against the Wild.
And also the Kings were not good this year, but they weren't like the Sharks, let's just say. They weren't complete bottom feeders.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you look at still what he did against the Wild and the Blues. He still created offense for the Ducks in those games. I mean
his numbers are a lot worse in those games, but yeah.
But yeah. But he still is generating offense, still is good in transition.
I mean, I'm giving him an A.
Yes.
It's a pretty easy A for me, because again, my expectations were kind of minimal for him. I didn't know what the transition would be like, because it's kind of a his path it's not the kind of path that translates to immediate impact, and he had that.
So I'm just looking right now. So he had only 3 of those final 7 were against LA. And
so there you go. I mean, I'm saying even if some of them were against LA, it's not this huge like caveat.
Yep.
And for Lindholm, I give him an A. Tiny sample, but he was awesome when he did play.
Absolutely fantastic.
He was arguably the Ducks' best defenseman in the season, despite the lack of a sample. So yeah, and then guys that didn't make the list, I didn't put in Carter Rowney. Didn't play enough. I didn't put in Ryan Miller because he retired. We don't really need to kind of look back, and also that grade, would not have been pretty.
Yeah. You're really selling it short, because we did do David Backes.
Yeah, but like David Backes, I don't know. He felt like more of a presence this season. I don't know. And then didn't talk about Josh Mahura. I don't know. Do you want to give him a grade? I would give him a D range. I don't think he was very good when he did play this season. Showed flashes, but wasn't that great.
Yeah, I think that I'd probably agree with that. I'd say D or B, or not D or B, D or C in that range.
Vinny Lettieri. How could we forget Vinny Lettieri?
Him and Andy Walensky with those elite one-timers.
I think that for them, you're allowed to combine the two, combine all of their contributions to get to a grade. So I'll give them a C, just to be kind.
Yeah,
just to be kind. For the elite shot and the elite one-timer, I'm giving them a C.
What about Cody Curran?
I'll give him an A, because he was a trooper.
He gave us the elite big booming shot meme.
Yeah, and what about Andrew Agozzino or Chase DeLeo? They got cameos.
Sure.
Oh, I mean, Simon Benoit, he was actually good defensively when he played. Didn't bring a lot offensively, but I'm not giving him a grade either. So yeah, there we go, folks. I think that's the entire report card. Yeah. I should mention I did give Sam Carrick a grade, so maybe I'm a little inconsistent, but I will fall back on your excuse, which is it's our show.
Should we have given grades to guys that were traded away?
Yanni
Hakanpää and Ben Hutton.
Ben Hutton. I mean, if you want to go off of expectation for Hakanpää, you might have to give him an A. You might be forced to give him an A.
Yeah.
Ben Hutton was just like nothing for this team. He was awful. So I'd be comfortable with an F there. Is that too harsh? Maybe.
I think maybe. He played with Larson.
True. I mean, I thought he would come in and be decent, and he like really was not like to expectation. So
Christian Juice.
I'm sure he looked great in training camp. I'm sure he lit it up in the scrimmages. So I'll give him an A
What a
just for that.
O-Dog saying, what about the one game where Dostal played backup?
Looked great on the bench. Wore that cap. His mask wearing was, nice and snug. How
Oh,
would
oh,
you?
wait. Here's what if we're doing team grades.
Hmm.
Dallas Eakins
I was actually about to say that.
on the same wavelength right now.
Uh,
Good podcasting.
I would say below C. Like definitely below C.
He was not average. I can guarantee that.
I mean,
I'd go F.
do you give him some credit that some of the young players got better? Because I feel like if you watch this team this year,
He also scratched Terry when he was playing fine.
well, that's the thing. I feel like the progress kind of happened despite the coaching.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to go. I'm sorry. I'm going F. I mean, there's just really nothing you can point to with Akins. And like we've talked about this previously, like they got worse in certain categories from last year. And like, I don't know if arguably the roster was better this year. And like the power play continued to suck. There was all this mismanagement of the lines, this weird handling of Trevor Zegras. Like and I'm really trying to think of positives here. And again, I can't really think of any. So I'm going F. I'm sorry if that's harsh. Dallas Eakins seems like a nice person, seems really uppity, positive, but I'm sure he'll manage this negativity fine. This
Yeah.
F. I'm sure he'll take it in stride.
Bob Murray and management overall.
F.
Yep.
Big F. I mean,
big F.
huge missed opportunity at the trade deadline. And you can even go back to last season, but missed opportunity there. There will be the people that will cry till the end of time that there was not enough, the prices weren't right or whatever. We just have no way of knowing that. We just really don't.
Here's the issue here is that like the Ducks have screwed themselves over in the expansion draft. I mean, granted, they're not going to lose a good player, but I mean, there was a much better way to optimize this thing.
They didn't optimize it. I just and if you look at Bob Murray's moves this season, okay, so Volkov didn't really lead to anything, but they didn't give up anything for that. I mean, Antoine Morin and a late round pick, and then Hayden Fleury, turned out to be fine, and they gave up a kind of a lottery ticket in Hakanpää to get him. But these are not like franchise altering, needle moving moves. So I'm not going to give him like a ton of credit for that.
And here's the issue here is that the Ducks have still yet to make any sort of move where they are moving a guy off the roster who makes them better now to improve the long-term outlook of the franchise.
Yep. And it's kind of something you have to do when you're rebuilding, which Dallas Eakins has said is a rebuild over and over and over.
The team is now saying it's a rebuild. Show me what they've done that's actually rebuilding outside of just drafting high. Well, what have they actually done to rebuild?
They traded Nick Ritchie for Danton Heinen, and that looks terrible now.
Yeah.
That looks terrible because Heinen has either been scratched or hasn't played well.
And Nick Ritchie is on the top power play for Boston.
Yeah.
Shocker. You and I were both saying Nick Ritchie got undue crap from a lot of people and misevaluated by the team.
I mean, his penalty taking habits are still awful.
Yeah, but
look at his player card.
But he's being put in a much better situation. Like, granted, like some of it is obviously Boston's in a better spot, but he wasn't used on the power play like he is in Boston. He wasn't the front net presence. Like I was watching the game yesterday for them, and he's on that power play with Pasternak, Bergeron, Marchand, and all those guys. And Richie's the guy right in front of the net because if you look at a lot of his numbers from the last couple of years, he had a really high expected goal total, and a lot of that is because he's getting chances in front of the net. And shocker, that has led to success when he's been put there on the power play.
Yeah. So I think that's all I've got for everybody tonight. I think I've got nothing else. We're doing questions.
We're just doing some quick questions.
Okay, quick questions.
So for those, we got to let people who have been stuck with us on Twitch get their voice heard.
I actually, I'm sorry. Didn't forget.
For those of you watching on YouTube,
I forgot Silverberg. So
yeah, watching on YouTube or listening to your favorite podcast services, we do it on live stream at twitch.tv/crashspawn every single week, where you can come support us in a way that's completely free to you. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime sub each and every month. You do have to hit that subscribe button after 30 days, and it does help out significantly. So DB Lowry 3507 says, what's the goalie depth chart look like next season?
I mean, it'll likely be Gibson with Stolars again. and probably Dostal in the AHL. I mean, it's probably going to be very similar to this year. I don't know if there's going to be any changes there.
Yeah, I agree. Easy Way Colt asked, based on eye test slash stats in the last in let's say 5 years, what's the ceiling and what's the floor for Zegras and Drysdale in terms of points per game, all-star level, comparable players, etc.
Wow, just throwing it all out there.
Yeah.
So I'll do Zegras, you'll do
Oh,
Drysdale.
I wanted Zegras.
Okay, I'll help you with Drysdale, but
Okay.
I'll just say for Zegras, I think he can be like an 80, 70, 80 point player and like maybe like a poor man's Patrick Kane.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if I see him ever reaching like the 100 kind of crossing 100 point mark.
No, but I think that you're spot on where he can be in the point per game, maybe slightly above point per game at the end of
Yeah.
it all. I think the floor for him is essentially maybe I think no matter what, I think the floor for him is just a first line center, a standard
Yeah.
first line center, 60 points, 50 to 60 point player.
Yeah. Like the floor for him is probably like an average first line center.
Yeah. And so Jamie Drysdale,
Tougher one.
it's definitely tougher, and it's also because of his age. I think he showed flashes where he can.
I feel like this year, the games in the NHL may actually make it harder to evaluate him because it's like how much do you trust them one way or another?
I mean, coming into all of this, I thought his floor was essentially like a Cam Fowler type of defenseman.
I mean,
from the right side, and I think that he seems like that's probably where he could end up with a little bit more of an offensive ceiling to him than Cam Fowler has.
Yeah, I would say the floor is like a second pairing, a very good second pairing defenseman, kind of like a Cam Fowler in a way. And then the ceiling is an elite first line, or sorry, an elite first pairing guy. And I don't know if I ever see him really becoming the kind of point producing defenseman because if you watch him play, his value add is really the transition game. It's not so much when he's in the offensive zone. And yeah, he'll have flashes there, but I think he tops out as just like a very good 5-on-5 defenseman, which is a great get.
Yeah, I don't think his ceiling is gonna be a Norris caliber defenseman, but I think he could maybe end up in the top 10.
He could be in the running a year or two. I mean, who knows?
But I don't think he's going to be a guy that's consistently going to be known as the top defenseman in the league. But I think he's definitely going to be a top 10 D-man in the league.
Yeah, and I don't think anything he did this season really took away from that projection. I think he's right on track. I think that if you're listening to what we're saying now and comparing it to what we're saying at the draft, it's probably very similar, maybe even a little bit more optimistic. So there you go.
Our good buddy John at Defend the Nest said, question, what team does the upset Cinderella run in the playoffs? Should we really be asking you this?
I mean, I am the only one, I guess, at the fourth period that picked the Canadians out of
Shocker.
10 people.
Did they force you to add Montreal Canadiens fan on your byline for that?
It's actually hilarious because if you look at the picks, it's just this sea of Leafs logos, and then it's just there's me with the little Habs logo and Series MVP Gallagher.
You're gonna get the fact that that's on a major website. You are going to get torched.
I mean, I've had people reply but I've actually had people come out saying they agree with me. So there you go.
Really?
Screw you. Well, here's the thing: if they beat the Leafs, they're gonna beat whoever they play next. I really do think they're gonna.
So Cinderella.
I'm going Habs.
Okay.
I'm going Habs.
I'm going to go
Panthers?
mainly because of the division. Well, are the Panthers, would that be considered a Cinderella run, seeing as they're the second team in that division? They're the second seed.
I think just based on the general perception of them.
So I would go either the Panthers or mainly because of their division, the team that could make a run to the semifinals that would be a bit of an upset would be the Islanders.
I actually disagree with that. I think the Islanders should beat the Penguins.
But like I said, they're the 4 seed. The Penguins are the 1 seed. So based upon that, go. Okay.
Habs.
Sure. Disagree there. Leafs are just gonna wipe them.
They're not.
Although it's not the most. Yeah, the Avs Blues is actually the most lopsided. Did you hear? Did you look at Dom's preview?
I didn't actually read it. I was just gonna bring up Ryan O'Reilly's comment.
What was his comment?
He said they're gonna win. That they're gonna beat the Avalanche.
So you and I both love looking at numbers, love looking at stats, everything like that. And so Dom Luszczyszyn, or however you pronounce it, does a great job over the Athletic, putting essentially percentages to what the percentage chance of a team winning a series is. And I feel like its standard is in the 60 to 60 40.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah. The Avs are at 88%.
Yes, exactly.
To beat the Blues.
88% chance to win the series.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen anything in the 80s, let alone 88%.
So on the fourth period, this is the funny thing. I got flack for picking the Habs, but a couple people picked the Blues to beat the Avalanche.
No one did. I'm looking at it right now.
Or no, sorry. I took someone saying Blues or Avs in 7 is picking the Blues. I guess that was how it registered in my brain. But yeah,
calling out your boss.
Yeah, I guess I am. Let's just skip this topic. Although I'm sure no one's
I'm looking at all of your picks, and your Panthers pick or your Lightning pick. That's actually looking okay. But going against the Wild, wow. Come back.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't feel awesome about that one, but I think Vegas is. I mean, someone picked the Jets to beat the Oilers.
Yeah,
no. That's just wild to me. That is wild. I mean, it's funny because I felt like a bit of a contrarian picking the Bruins, and it turns out like I guess a lot of people are shorting the Capitals, who did win Game 1, by the way. No one picking against the Hurricanes. So anyway, yeah, this is my favorite time of year, picking series predictions.
Let's get back to these questions. Fire Carl said, question, who do you think replaces Dave McNabb? No clue. Please, God, don't let it be Dave Nonis, though.
Randy Carlyle.
Please don't let it be Dave Nonis. M. Young said, will you guys be watching the World Championships with 2 of our potential first-round picks playing in it with Power and Beniers?
I'll try to catch some games. I mean, I don't even know where it is this year. Let's see. IHF World Championship.
While you're doing that, red or black, Lewis is going to Vegas tomorrow.
Huh?
Should he put money on red or black?
Black.
Roulette. There you go.
Yeah. It's in not Switzerland. Damn it. All right, I'll keep searching.
Dalton Keys is asking, who is Zegras' biggest competition for the Calder next year?
Ooh, that is a great question.
He is Calder eligible. Probably Quentin Byfield.
So this year, by the way, it's Frisco, Texas.
That was the U18.
That's the U18.
That's the U18.
I'm just never gonna find this. Sorry, guys. I quit. I'll try to watch games though. Once I figure out where it is, what the timing is.
I'll find it right now because I am much better at doing this than you.
Yeah, clearly.
Yakubian said, when do the Ducks have an actual shot at the playoffs again? It's in Belarus and Latvia.
Oh yeah, so that time reference can be gnarly. I mean, if you're being optimistic, you might be inclined to say next year. If you're drinking whatever, if you're sharing David McNabb's Diet Coke, which he's famous for, you might say next year. And you might not be completely crazy, but for me, the likeliest scenario is a couple of years from now.
3 years.
Well, I mean, we're talking getting back to the playoffs, like just competing for a playoff.
2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I'm saying 2 years.
So let's see. Ducks Go said, with $50 million coming available in 2022, should the Ducks get Tyson Barrie as a line mate for Drysdale? Also, if not, no.
Tyson Barrie's way overrated.
So I'm now showing his player card on the screen. No.
He's big bad.
His defense is in the 0th percentile.
0th?
0%. That's how bad. 0th. He is god awful defensively. He's going to get paid. And the thing that a lot of people forget when you're looking at the available money, the Ducks have to re-sign their own guys.
That's what happened with this coming off season. Is people were like,
they have so much space. Like, granted, I think they're gonna have more space than I projected, mainly because I think there was something weird with the way Cap Friendly was listing it. But
Jake being wrong about cap numbers.
Yeah,
this has never happened.
It happens. So, but it looks like they're gonna have 7 to 9 mil in cap space. So it's not exactly like they have this like huge amount to work with.
No, they'll have some flexibility, but they're probably better off either sitting on it or maybe trying to eat some bad salary to get picks, like you brought up earlier.
Chris Kindred said, maybe an unrealistic situation, but if Kevin Adams called and said he's only willing to trade Jack Eichel if Jeff Skinner is included, what would you give up, and would Skinner's contract almost negate Eichel's value?
No, I mean, I feel like Jeff Skinner is like being... The way that they talked about him and treated him this year in Buffalo, I feel like maybe they were... It's almost kind of like the Raquel narrative in Anaheim a little bit. Lack of finishing. But I said this in our Patreon show, and I'll just repeat it here. If I'm the Ducks, I'm just kind of out on the Eichel situation as a whole.
Yep, same.
Because the cost of bringing him is pretty much it's either Drysdale or Zegras, and then a pick, maybe Comtois. And I just think that would set the Ducks back. Like they've made it this far in the rebuild. They have like a little accumulation of talent, and to just kind of nuke that to go and get Jack Eichel, you're not really bringing him into a situation where you can go and win because you've caved out all the depth. So I would just stay out of it completely.
Yep, completely agree.
If I were the Kings, or if you're a team that's closer, 100% you're thinking about it. But for the Ducks, I just think that they're too far off to really kind of make that jump.
Yeah, and Ducksco is asking how the Ducks would spend that money. They're going to spend it on Zegras and Drysdale. They're going to have to give them more contracts. They're going to have to spend it on whoever. Like, all these guys are going to need to get paid. Comtois is going to need another contract at some point. So, yeah. Dalton Keys asks, I've chimed in. Let's end with this. Very quick, very easy question. Let's end with this one. Dalton Keys asks, will Zegras ever wear the C in Anaheim? Who do you... Let's just go. Who's the next captain?
Ryan Getzlaf?
Once Getzlaf's out. Once he retires.
Oh, why are you doing this to me?
Because I like torturing you.
I think Zegras will be.
I don't think it's going to be Fowler. I long thought it would be Fowler. I think Fowler's too old now.
Well, yeah, I just think it's going to be someone from that next wave. I mean, it could be Zegras, could be Drysdale, could be Comtois, could be Terry, could be any one of those guys. But I think, when you have a first-line center who's the big-time point producer, it's just pretty rare for those guys not to end up being captains. So I'm going to go with him. Here's my question to you. And I think we may have been asked this in a previous show, or I saw this on Twitter. Is Zegras wearing 46 next year?
No.
How many number changes are we seeing next year?
Comtois changes, Terry changes, Zegras changes, Steele already changed, so he's not.
You think Terry ditches 61?
Yeah, he goes to 19.
He could have done it this year, though.
I doubt that they would have let him. He was a scratch. He was a guy that was sent to the AHL last year.
That's true. So Terry 19, Comtois 44. Zegras 13.
Zegras 13 or 11.
My favorite thing we've ever done on this show is try to figure out.
Wasn't that on a watch along?
No, it was on a regular show. I'm pretty sure.
I think it was a watch along. I think we did the number. No. What was on the watch along was Archgate.
Yeah. Well, Drysdale, does he switch as well?
Does he go to 6? I mean, Drysdale is locked into the NHL. There's no way they send him back to junior next year.
Looking at how he played this year, though.
Do they send him back? Yeah, there's no way they're sending him back to junior.
He didn't play that well this year, though.
Does he benefit from going back to junior?
I don't think so. I wouldn't do it. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, because he can't play in the AHL next year.
Yeah. They've kind of, I don't know. It's funny how they were so talking about not wanting to rush these guys and not having another Cam Fowler situation.
Now they're
that's kind of where they are now with Jamie Drysdale.
Oh yeah, now I remember. It was on the episode that someone had looked up a tweet from Zegras where he was wearing 15 when he was 15, wearing 11.
Yeah. No, I mean that's the funny thing with the Drysdale though is now they're kind of pigeonholed and no more flexibility. So yeah. Anyway, we'll see. This has been a pretty big episode. We're above 2 hours now.
Yeah.
So
there's not going to be a lot of episodes or a lot of games for Ducks fans to watch. So
we're giving you all the content.
Yeah, this is your Ducks content.
Yeah, I'm just mad I forgot Silverberg. That's really going to sting for a while. But good catch though. I'm glad we were able to talk about him.
Yeah. Because we'll see. Let's just say, is Silverberg a Duck next year?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine his trade value being very high.
Yeah. There's
is Raquel back next year?
Ooh.
You're struggling with this.
Yes.
You want to say yes.
I want to say no.
Well, I mean, okay, what about Manson? Because I've heard that. Where did I hear this? Someone said something, or I read somewhere that there will be changes this summer, that the Ducks are going to do something.
How many times have we heard that?
I don't know. It's just, what do you want to believe in? What do you want to choose to believe in? Suspend disbelief.
How many times have we heard that, though? And how many times are we going to keep believing it?
I mean, how many times are we going to believe that, yes, if Gibson plays at Vezina level, that kids all get better and that veterans stay healthy, that this team will be good?
Yeah.
Because that's been the bill for 2 years.
I don't have faith. I mean, yeah.
I don't have faith. You should just put that on your license plate. Your Ducks
Put
team.
that on my Twitter bio.
I don't have faith.
Fired Carlo asked a good point. When does Bob Murray have his exit interview?
I don't know.
You would have expected that to happen last week.
Well, to your point, did we talk about this while we were recording? I think we did. It's been 2 hours now, so everything's blending together.
The 31 thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, we did talk about that while recording.
Well, if that's all to be believed, if you're gonna interpret that a certain way, then maybe change is coming. Maybe it's finally happening. As Jake just kind of looks around skeptically, just not saying anything, blinking away. Yeah, you're like that GIF with the guy just kind of blinking.
Yeah, I'm either that or I'm like the dog in the burning house saying this is fine.
I don't think you're saying this is fine. I think you've been
that's Bob Murray.
Yeah. I mean, I still think the likeliest scenario is one more year of
DB
this
Lowry
regime.
says, "Who are you guys pulling for in the playoffs?" And you can't say Montreal, someone else.
Well, okay, that's a good one. I found myself today. It's funny watching that Lightning Panthers game. I was kind of rooting for both. Like it was just so much fun. I picked the Lightning in that series, but seeing the Panthers win would be fun. So maybe one of those teams. I still love watching that. Like I said this on Twitter, like that there are a few things I love more in this sport right now than just watching the Lightning power play. If that's what we're going to get for like the next 2 months, I would be fine with that. Just watching that team.
I'm going to go with Toronto.
Oh, what?
Have
you read these articles about, like that The Athletic does where it's like one scout, one executive, one coach?
I try to, and then I'm just like, I don't care.
There's so much skepticism though about the Leafs.
Yeah, and that's also why is like the Leafs have been, and that's why I'm pulling for them is the fact that the Leafs have been built, in my opinion, the right way.
That's the funny thing though, is that like as much as they are the rival team to the team I cheer for, if they make it out, I'll actually kind of root for them. I think too. Just
they've done things the right way. They've done things the right way, and I want to see someone who's put together a team in a good way actually get rewarded for that. And so that's why I'm pulling for them. I'd pull for Carolina for similar type of situations.
Yeah, and like I think with the Leafs also, just to see those naysayers kind of get shut down would be pretty great. No love for Winnipeg or Edmonton.
Me. Do I really have to say anything about Winnipeg?
Here's a thought that randomly popped into my head today. Matt Duchene has been awful in Nashville. And remember that contract? Remember when they signed that contract?
Remember the trade that Joe Sakic just like that trade is amazing.
Yeah. So I guess my answer is a bunch of teams. But that's the beauty of the playoffs.
Let's do this.
Beauty of the playoffs. I can cherry pick.
We're now at 2 hours and 11 minutes. So let's just kind of
whatever.
Yeah, who cares at this point? Let's just real quick. Team that you're pulling from each division. So not the North is obviously Montreal for you. So
yeah.
Who do you have in the East? Who are you pulling for?
Hold on, let me pull up the list here.
Not who you're picking, who you're rooting for.
Who I'm rooting for in the East.
You can say no one also. That is a viable answer.
This is going to be slightly controversial, but man, this is actually very controversial because I'm a Habs fan, but I kind of want to see Boston beat Washington because I'm kind of tired of the Washington narratives.
And then the Central?
In the Central, I mean, I think it's Tampa Bay. Runner pick.
No, I'm not talking about who you think's going to win, who you're rooting for. Who you're pulling
No,
for.
I'm rooting for Tampa Bay. I like them.
Okay. And then the West.
In the West, I mean, I want to see Colorado succeed.
Yep. So I have in the North, I'm pulling for Toronto. The East, I don't really care. I don't really like any of those teams, so nobody. The South,
You're not rooting for Kyle Palmieri?
I mean,
2 goals today.
I also am like whatever on the Islanders. By the way, still the worst trade, one of the worst trades the Ducks have ever made. And I dug up the quote from Bob Murray today and put it in our Discord of him saying, I trade him because he could score 20 goals this year and we can't afford him. Let me just remind everyone, he was an RFA. And they like when that quote are going to be an RFA. Oh, so bad. And then I have the Panthers in the Central. 93 expansion draft,
They're fun.
93 expansion. And
They're fun.
in the West, it's between Minnesota and Colorado for me. And they go Colorado just because they play such a fun style of hockey.
Yeah, and I've kind of cooled off on my Minnesota optimism a little bit.
Oh, I think they win that series.
I kind of hope they do. I don't think they do. I didn't pick them, but
I did.
I kind of hope that they do, just because I am a little tired of the Vegas act.
Yep.
It's getting to that point.
Give me dollar Kirill, y'all.
That's a name. That's a nickname for him.
Have you not seen the shirts?
I have not seen
Look
these
up
shirts.
the shirts. Let me find it. I'm gonna find it for everyone real quick.
God.
Dollar Bill Kirill.
That's so bad.
Let me see. It was because it's a nickname that Matt Dumba gave him. So here it is on the screen. Dollar Bill Kirill.
Oh,
And it's his
funny.
face with Ray-Ban sunglasses with dollar signs in them.
That's funny. I mean, he's really helped their team, of course. So
yeah. Okay. All right. I think that's probably gonna do it for us tonight, folks.
By the way, this is your first podcast in a new chair.
Yes, you do not want to let this thing end, do you?
Titan. No, I'm just pointing it out. You're in a new
Secret
chair.
Labs. Yes, actually paid up for a chair so it doesn't make noises on the podcast.
Is that really why?
Part of the reason. It's also very comfy.
Yeah, I need to get me one of those.
You
Okay.
should.
Well, anyway, if you are still listening, congratulations. You win the prize. I don't know what the prize is, but you win. Congratulations again. If you enjoyed today's show, if you enjoyed what we do, there's a few ways to support us. The biggest one, and we referenced it a few times today, is our Patreon page, patreon.com/crashthepond. 3 different levels there of membership. For $1 a month, you get access to our Discord chat, which is a lot of fun. It's really taken on a life of its own. It's really fun in the playoffs too. You get to chat with other diehard Ducks fans. We sometimes just shoot the breeze about anything. We also have channels just for hockey. That's for $1 a month. For $5, you get access to 2 bonus episodes, as well as that Discord chat where you can also throw in suggestions for episodes and we will discuss them. And on those bonus episodes, we go more in depth on the Ducks, if that's even possible, bigger topics that we can spend more time on there. And we also go league wide. So on the last one that we did our predictions, series predictions. So you could still go back and listen to that. It's not too dated if you're still on the fence about joining. And then for $15 a month, we do 2 watch alongs. So during the summer, we might do retro games. We did that when the pandemic started, previous watch alongs. But during the season, we'll do an alternative broadcast for you for 2 Ducks games a month.
And by the way, anyone who's subbed at that tier, in Discord, just throw in what game, what series you want us to do. I already have a thought in my head for us to do a Panthers Lightning game, and maybe we'll discuss doing that even this week. And so let's take a look at this. Felix and I will look at the schedule, throw some message in there, see when that's going to work, and try to get that in this week for you guys.
The tough thing for us for that series is the Eastern
start time. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But for the Stanley Cup playoffs, though, we will be doing watch-alongs of playoff games.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be a lot of fun. A few other ways you can support us, though. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a rating and a review there. Those go a very long way. They are very much appreciated. And we will read them on the show once we get a new one. I don't think we have any new ones to read today. Also, make sure to subscribe to us on Spotify. If you're not on Apple, check out our YouTube channel. Yes, we are on YouTube, youtube.com/crashthepond. You get to see the video version of this show. So you get to see the Twitch stream, you get to see all the fancy graphs that Jake puts up. So it's nice. It's different. You get to see Salem the Black Cat. You get to see Jake's all the effort he puts into his decor and to his apparel.
Today I didn't put in that much effort.
You put in 0 effort.
Just a tank top. I mean, my hair's done today, though, not a hat.
After all the crap you gave me the last few weeks.
I mean, my tank top is still way more bright than whatever you're wearing. So
I'm wearing a gray t-shirt.
Yeah, I'm wearing a bright red USC tank top. So come at me.
Okay, that's at YouTube.com.
That has a weird cheetah print on it. I don't know. It's weird. I like it.
Yeah, it's solid. It's a good one. Yeah. It's a good shirt. Anyway, I'm losing it here. YouTube.com/crashthepond. Check out our website, crashthepond.com. Jake is going to put up a cool expansion draft article there. Make sure to check that out. And find us on Twitter. Jake is on Twitter at ReindeerGames91. And I'm on Twitter at Felix_Sicard.
Apple
Jake.
Podcasts.
I brought that up.
We have a new review.
Oh, we do.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I got it.
God.
So
okay,
this is actually an update to an old one, but this is from he had an update. This is from Will JL from the UK. Came in. He actually had messaged me about it last week, so I was waiting for it to come in from May 8th. Great podcast, 5 stars. Says great podcast. Jake, Felix, and CJ do an awesome job. For a guy in the UK, it's hard for me to watch more than just highlights. The guys here doing a fantastic job to really flesh out what's happening, provide useful context. Great podcast, really fun. Keep the good work. And then update post 2021 season to this. In an otherwise bleak season, these guys really were my Duck highlight. The guys bring a lot of fun, but the best thing is the balance. It allows Jake to voice frustration of the entire fan base, while Felix can bring it back to an even keel. It's clear the guys take great pride in what they do, and the product is clean, fun, and informed. Incredible work.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know you could update reviews.
I didn't know that either, but he's mentioned to me that he updated, so I've been waiting for it to come in. So thank you so much for that. And I think that last line is pretty spot on for what we do. I think we do take great pride in a lot of things, from the video element to our audio quality. You and I definitely take pride in, and to make sure that we're informed on kind of all of information. We provide a lot of different useful context to everyone that they really can't find anywhere else.
Yeah, and Jake certainly voiced his frustrations this year. No debating that. I just want to know, Will JL, let us know what if you are a soccer fan, English Premier League. I don't know. Are you maybe it's because you're a Tottenham fan, and you're drawing in the people. Who knows? Who knows? No comment from you.
I don't know. I would need to go back to my DMs with him. Him and I have DM'd a couple times, and so I don't know if we've ever talked footy.
Okay, well let's make that happen. Okay, well that will do it for us tonight, guys. Thank you for listening. If you got through all this, like I said, you win the gold star, and we will talk to you at the next episode. Have a good week. Enjoy the playoffs.
Yep. Bye.